Welcome everybody. This is Level One Walkthrough. I'm your host Tony, along with Rob, aka Big Boss. What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing, man?
Dude, I don't even want to even talk to you. Like, I just want to get right into The Last of Us Part Two.
Sure,
Like,
sounds good.
so just to let everybody know, this podcast is going to be strictly about the intro all the way up to what leads up into basically where the story is going to be driven towards, as far as like what your main plot of your motivation for your character. So we're going to be talking about almost about 4 hours into. For me, it took about 4 hours. How long did it take, Rob? How long did it take you to
It
get there?
it took me roughly about two-ish
Two-ish.
to
Okay.
get to what the one we're talking about.
Okay. So you kind of went through a little bit faster than I do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is going to be completely, filled with spoilers with this game. I mean, from the intro all the way up into the events of like what happens. Basically, everyone kind of that has been paying attention already knows that kind of Ellie is driven on some sort of revenge. There's something going on. There's something that she's doing, so it's motivating her to get to this what she's doing. So, um, but this is going to be mainly about our first impressions, what we thought, of the actual game, what got us, what we noticed, and just kind of just first impressions. For myself, I'm still playing the game. You, on the other hand, go ahead and say it.
All right. Well, I beat it on Friday, which was what was it? On the 26th. So it took me about a week or so to get through, but it took me about 33 hours, 33 and a half hours on the first playthrough. And then, so I started New Game Plus the next day.
Okay.
So I went to that a little bit more difficult. I actually didn't go to like the survival one. I think that you did.
Yeah.
I just put it on hard.
Okay.
But so I did that, and then I'm on my second playthrough. I haven't played in a couple of days, but I'm about 7 hours into my second playthrough on New Game Plus. So
Okay.
it's kind of where I'm at.
Okay. So let's start off from the beginning itself.
Okay.
The game as far as from your first impressions, give me kind of like just an overall thought of from from the beginning to like where it leads into. Like what was running through your mind? What did you experience?
Um, so I obviously we're all excited for this game. As soon as it started, I was just like, let's fucking go. I want to see how they kind of open it. And I believe when they opened it, there was Joel talking to Tommy, I want to say. Was
Yes.
that where it kind
Yes.
of go? And then he's explaining what happened from the first game and how, he basically killed all the fireflies in the
Mhm.
hospital and
Mhm.
wanted to get Ellie out. And his motivation for doing so, obviously he wanted to save her. He didn't want her to die. And he's
Right.
telling Tommy that.
Mhm.
And of course, the only people that know are Joel and Ellie, technically, even though he lied to her.
Right.
And now like Tommy, which is, he told the legit reason why he did it.
Right.
So I love how it opened up. Even though it wasn't really like what I was expecting, but it made sense to kind of like, oh, of course he would tell him. Like
Right.
after all of this, and he
Right.
came back, and they were kind of like, "What happened?" kind of thing. I'm sure he asked. So,
Mhm.
um, but I like the way that it opened. Just my like initial impressions is I told you I got a new TV. It looks fucking phenomenal. Like
Yeah.
it looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
So that was like my first impression of how it kind of started, and I guess we'll kind of go into it as it starts opening up. But as far as you, like when you first saw it and kind of were going through the motions, like how did you feel and what did you think?
When I was going through it, it kind of took me back to because playing the game. I mean, I've beaten the game like either three times, and it doesn't. The story itself doesn't get old. It's like you experience new things with it. And most recently, I just finished the Left Behind DLC, which I never touched,
Mm,
and I played that right before the actual game started, and I'm really glad that I did that because it really made the game feel like it was fresh again. And if you haven't played if people haven't played the DLC, I highly recommend it because it gives you more to the actual story of Ellie, but it also introduces some things that they didn't really do too much in the first game when you would deal with humans as well as the infected. So they kind of created a little like they threw like a little monkey wrench in there, and it changed the dynamics of like what you had to do in order to be able to, you know, figure out how you're gonna get around this situation. So I think they could have easily been able to do that within the game, but I think maybe just restrictions, and with the DLC they gave them more options. Um, but in the beginning, just when Joe was telling Tommy about that, I really just I started to just think about it, and I was like, this story really it does make sense, because we talked about that, like what's going to happen after this. Is Ellie going to have some sort of resentment towards Joel because maybe she figures it out, is it going to be like
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yep.
But I mean, the story between them two is just, at this point, when you're noticing it, it's very fragile. It's to the point where they both know what happened, and they both have their suspicions on each other, because Ellie doesn't trust what he told her, and then Joel obviously has to carry that burden of telling her a lie and making it feel real, and telling her that this is what no matter what, I did this for you, and that's the thing that
Mm-hmm.
you have to really paint that in a picture as a parent. Like, he didn't want to lose his child, and he's not going to lose his child again. Like,
Yeah.
that's not going to happen. There was no actual like choice. And Tommy, even at the end of that conversation, when Joel tells him, Tommy even says that, he's like, yeah, it's like, I guess you really didn't, like, I would have done the same thing. and
Exactly. Yeah.
and even at that moment after that, if you recall, when Joe was cleaning the guitar, the strings of the guitar, they had that little moth, little
Yep.
imprint
Yeah.
into it. So I'm kind of curious on why this moth is kind of themed within the game, because even when you load the game and it's loading for the first time, you see like these moths that are like attracted to this light that's in the far corner up on the top right. And I wonder why that's kind of narratively woven into the story, because they did that with the Fireflies.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious on what moths represent. Maybe they are cleaning up something that's dirty, or they're the remnants of like stuff that's like deteriorating, and they're still there. So
They definitely do touch on that,
okay,
like later parts of the game. So again, we're not going to go into that yet. Um, a different podcast, because
right,
as we go, we're only talking about the first few hours. But
right,
they do, once you. It's a good catch that you saw that,
yeah,
because at first I noticed it, but I didn't like put two and two together until they kind of expand upon the
right,
idea later on. So,
right.
but yeah, so yeah,
I mean,
I felt like after that talk was a really good thing,
yeah.
and then it also starts out with, after the conversation they have, they kind of get on their horses and get back to town,
Right,
and just
but even before they even do that, when they get out of that house, they open up the garage, and they're both on their horses, and you're going out, and you have your guitar slinged on your back. There's people that they killed to get to that house. So you see bodies, fresh bodies, that
mm-hmm,
were either infected, that are on the road.
mm-hmm,
So you get to see that they capture that so well, that there's such a beauty of what's going on in the world, where nature is kind of taking over, but there's this ugliness that's still there no matter what. And there's like just a remnants that's still there. Like, even though they're having this heartfelt talk, before they even got to that point, they had to kill something to get to that, to be comfortable, to feel safe. And I love what they're doing, man. Honestly, it's this story is so earned. It it makes you really think about like how important it is for these characters to feel like they have their own lives, and like they actually do matter in like what they're doing, because it's not ham-fisted. These characters are going through this journey along with you, and you're seeing what's happening after some choices that they make. And in the course of this whole time, doesn't it? You had told me that the course of this time is like over 25 years
yes.
since the outbreak.
Yeah, since the outbreak, it's 25, and
Okay.
since the first game, it's been 5 years. So
Okay.
Ellie was 14, now 19, and Joel, they suspected in his mid to late 40s, is now in his 50s. So that's
Okay.
kind of where the time frame is, as where we're at with
Okay.
that. But I agree with you. I mean, like, it's those subtle differences, or
Mhm.
sorry, subtle like story beats that you see, like just that, just then you
Mm-hmm.
see all the dead bodies leading up to where they were leaving. It's like you understand that narratively, like, oh, obviously they had to kill their way to get to this point,
Right.
or do what have you. So it's like a story within a story almost.
Right.
You can tell that they spent a lot of time like paying attention to little small details,
Yeah.
and with stuff like that. I remember I was like looking on Twitter, and just of course all the different things that are coming from this game, but like
Mm-hmm.
just people commenting, the developers that were working on this game, and just like something as simple as rain on the window, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, I spent a lot of time shading that and doing that, and things like that. So it's like
Wow.
someone else came out and was like, oh, the way that the characters hold their guns,
Yeah.
it's you can like someone that knows how to like shoot their weapon, they comment and were like, oh, shout out to whoever made this animation, because it's clearly the right way to hold a gun or a weapon. I'm like, oh
Wow.
shit, like that people were just paying attention to these details during this
Mm-hmm.
game, that it just makes sense in there. It just adds to the reality, and fleshing out the characters and the world, and that's just like you said, it's just earned.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's also too like the journey of them coming back. That what's great about that is that after you have that discussion and tell Tommy about what had really happened, you're going through this trekking through this little environment, going back to the actual city, like the compound city, Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
city itself. But before you even get to that, you see like what's happening. You see how the nature and everything. It's just glistening everywhere. And then the best thing about that is when you come up to that gas station, and I'm like, man, this is something that I would, I, I, I'm just, I look at this and I'm just like, man, this looks so realistic. Like
Mm-hmm.
this situation of what a gas station would look like after years and years of like several decades of no one attending it, like how deteriorated everything is, and like that that old world is gone, but it's still there, but yet it's gonna eventually disappear completely.
Yeah.
And it's just that journey alone, just the journey getting up to that compound and you seeing it for the first time. It I think it really makes you really kind of sit back and like look and like how important it is for these characters to try to make something in this ugliness. And even though they are trying to, more than likely this is eventually going to catch up with all of them, no matter how much you fight and how much you try to survive. Any kind of slip up, it's so fragile. And the fact that the compound even has electricity, like they've been able to fortify and be able to keep themselves safe, but the outside threat is so alarming, because you're basically putting up a big flagpole for anyone that wants to try to be able to take what you have, because you have resources, you have something, you have what people are trying to survive on the outside and trying to get in. So it's
Yeah.
like you have that, and it's like
but
unfortunately because of that.
but luckily they have the numbers on their side, right? So they have a
Right,
huge town,
right,
and
right,
and that also deters people. Yeah, okay, they can have a gang of 4 or 5 people trying to
right,
to take something, supplies, what have you, and
right,
try to break
right,
in. But bro, good luck. You have like thousands of people. It looks like in this town. Well, I wouldn't say
right,
thousand, maybe like 1,000 people. But in this town, that they're all posted up, they all have their
right,
jobs, they're at different sections at different
right,
times, just like you would in some kind of security.
right,
But just talking about the details, man, like with that gas station, or just going past that a little bit, where they're riding on their horses, and you could see the sun come out, and you could see Joel like putting his hand up, because there's
yeah,
from the sun there's a glare. It's just like
yeah,
that subtle thing. I was like,
yeah,
damn, dude, they even
yeah.
like it's just cool seeing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when they first do that, when the water is trickling down from the like the sewer, when you first break out of the wall, in the first game, when Joel is actually you guys have just basically left the compound itself, or left the quarantine zone, and Joel puts his hand up because the water is like falling on him from a drain,
Mm-hmm.
and he puts his hand up. because he's like the water's hitting you, and he puts his hand up. It's like that environmental kind of awareness of these characters is just great. And no, I just like I looking at this as far as like the way that people's lives have become, and it's all routine where you have to do there's certain things you have to do, but there's a thriving town of people that are living like just their normal lives, but yet on the outside it's like it's all gone. Like you're kind of bringing yourself back to society in such a way, or a community, but that's it's so fragile. Like how many other compounds are like this in this world all over the place? Like how many people have tried to get to this point to be good, and then something happens, and then it just it falls apart. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, I'm sure it's difficult to do. I mean,
yeah,
how many people that you have with differing ideas and the
right,
way that things that should be,
mm-hmm,
or even egos. I'm
yeah,
sure someone's like, "Oh, I want to be mayor of this town because da 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 da." But
right,
like, it takes a lot for a bunch of people to kind of get on the same page with things,
yeah,
and that's the other reality of the situation. I feel like it's very rare for this amount of people to
yeah.
kind of build this, because it's very difficult to do.
And also too, speaking on that, as far as dynamics between people, and like how people will view certain things as one or the other, and like you have, it's a group mentality that you have to be aware that everyone has to look out for each other. But going to the relationship between Tommy and Joel, you've noticed that they're strong characters, they're strong men, and they're very old fashioned, and they don't show weakness a lot. And they even between the two of them, when events happen, or like after what he tells him, what Joel tells Tommy, there's that scene when they get off their horse and they're in the compound, and Tommy stops them for a second. He's like, "Hey, what you told me, I'll never tell it to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it to my grave." But there's a subtle little moment where they're very close to each other, but they never have that like give me a hug. Like I understand. Like I know you're in pain. We're all in pain. We're all carrying this. But there's just a subtle little thing that Joel does, and he just puts his hand. I believe he puts his hand on his shoulder, on his arm or something when he walks away, because they're both not facing each other. They're both like Joel's looking one way and Tommy's looking another way, and he like touches him for a second, and that's the closest that you get to that, because their kinship between the two of them are brothers, but yet they can't show that lack of strength, because they have to carry that, because they're very they're very cowboyish, very very old style men mentality of like I have to be strong for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take on these burdens, but I won't show that weakness, because I need to show that I'm strong for everybody else. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and I think that's right. I think you got it. The hit the nail on the head with that one. As far as them, I mean, they're older, so it's a different time, and so
Right.
they feel like they have to be strong for other
Yeah.
people, and they can't show emotion. But I also like read into it that, I mean, they haven't really been interacting with each other for so long.
Yeah.
In the first game, obviously they haven't spoken until he reaches up and comes into their town, and it's like, oh
Right.
shit, like I thought, what normal people would probably think is, oh, you're
Right.
probably dead, considering that
Right.
this whole outbreak thing is happening. So they were
Right.
very surprised to see each other, and but yeah, they haven't spoken in a long time, and it's something that it kind of it takes you getting used to again, that same relationship,
Mhm.
especially when you had with your brother. So just trying
Yeah.
to rekindle that, and then show some type of emotion without being quote unquote unmanly or whatever it
Right.
is.
Right. And even when he approaches Ellie for the first time, after that point when he gets to the compound, he basically brings the guitar as a gift, of like a gesture of like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm still like that scene that they have between the two of them. They're so distant from each other, and they're both not like opening up to each other, because they both know what happened,
This
but
is
they're
what I'm sorry. This part right here just
hmm
like kind of broke my heart,
yeah,
because she's like pushing him away,
yeah,
kind of like almost like an older daughter or son, for with their father or mother. Like, I'm older now, I know what I'm doing, kind of
right,
thing. Like,
right,
I'm not trying to have a relationship that deeply with and that's what happens, like that, like kids kind of get pushed, not pushed away, but like they push their parents away, and they're like, I'm an adult now, like I get to do whatever I want, you can't tell me what to do. I felt
Right.
like so bad for Joel because he's trying so hard to like still be there for Ellie, and I think that's the thing that kind of, it just separated them, was what happened in the first game. And then
Right.
you're like you're saying, he like like stayed up late, or try to come in, to Ellie's house and give
Mm-hmm.
her a gift. The one thing I noticed with this part is that he gives her a gift of the guitar, and it
Mm-hmm.
reminded me of when Sarah, his Joel's daughter, was
Yes.
staying up late to
Waiting for him.
give Joel his birthday gift.
Right.
So it kind of gave me those type of vibes between the two with that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we talked about beforehand, before the game even came out. Like we talked about how it's going to parallel some of like what Joel's experience was, because he was like the main like story thread, because he had lived the life before all of this happened and the life after, and he's totally two different people now. And now it's like you have the journey of with Ellie. You're having Ellie along with that into the story, and it's like they're both going to experience something very similar. Yet right now they're so far apart from each other because of the choice, because of what happened. But right when he's giving her that, and they're talking to each other. I had mentioned to you before when I had first noticed that, but Joel has just the way they capture this stuff, man. The way that they get these motion caption with these actors. There's a part where he's talking to Ellie right in the beginning, right before he gives her the guitar, and he has his thumb on his belt buckle, kind of like he's holding it, kind of like to keep himself like a posture, where he keeps his hand on there, kind of like if you put your hands in your pocket, but he puts
Hmm.
his thumb on top of his actual belt and right above his pants. And I'm like, you know what? That's such a cowboy thing to do. And I've never seen that before, but maybe that was, maybe that was the actor's actual choice to do that. Maybe he was directed. But I mean, these small little things that they do in this make these characters feel like they are completely 100% there, and it's unbelievable. Like the way they're going back and forth. Joel's trying to talk to her. He's pacing back and forth, telling her something. He even mentioned something about like a joke that he heard, and he even like tries to like break the ice with her, and she's not giving it to him because she knows what he did, but they want to talk about it, but they're not. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's there, but it's just like, hey, let me try to like let me try to reach for you one more time and show you how much you do matter. And that scene where he gives her the guitar and sings her that song just encapsulates everything. Like
Yeah.
she understood what he was doing because he couldn't just say it, but he basically wrote a song telling her what I did and what I'll do, what I can't do to lose you. And like I said, this this is so earned. It's earned for you to be able to just pay attention to these characters and want to know everything about them, because they're so realistic. They're so just you understand their frustration because they're so grounded. I just I just love it so much, man. Like I'm blown away from like what the experiences that I've had, and most games you don't have that. Like you don't have experiences like this. Just the simple little scene of you playing the guitar, where you actually take the controls to use the actual the control pad to like string your thumb up or down, and it uses the actual thumb on Joel to be able to like thread the actual strings. And it's so interesting that they did that, but it makes sense. That's what I'm saying. Like it just makes sense on what they're doing.
Yeah, most definitely. And like um you remember from the first game that, she wanted him, cuz he mentions like, hey, I used to play guitar. I always wanted to
Hmm.
be like, a musician. She was like,
Yeah.
what? And then she was like, yo, play me a song. And he was like, no, not really,
Yeah.
or whatever. And it's funny how it like reversed. Like, of course, now he wants to do it because he wants to win her back. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Just like he would with a kid.
Mhm.
And that was interesting to me, as well as I love. It's kind of funny, man. You know how like they games or have like tried to force a mechanic to work just because it's
Mhm.
new. Like
Yeah.
a lot of developers, even during the PS3 days when they didn't have Rumble, you remember that,
Right.
and they had the six axis controller and they had
Right.
the gyro whatever to kind of try to compete with the Wii and like how.
Right.
Xbox had with their Connect, where they're just using movement and things, and how they kind of some parts of a game made sense. Like if you're playing, I don't know, a lair,
Right.
you're flying a dragon and you're using the control to kind
I
of move
do
it up and
remember that.
down,
I
and it
do
was a
remember that.
terrible game. But that kind of made sense. But during times where like they kind of like, oh, this is how you throw a grenade, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to use this
Right.
like motion control where it doesn't like feel good to do just because you want to put it in the game.
Right.
And that when you're like, he's playing the guitar and you're able to kind of strum up on the touchpad to like start out, I'm like,
Mhm.
this is fucking cool. Like
Yeah.
I love that they kind of added, and it's not hard. They kind of have like a circular thing, and that's just to start a few notes, and then he obviously plays the
The
song or
remaining.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just like that small little thing that they just put in there. It just like they could have easily not even given you the ability to interact in this scene here, where he's singing, he's about to sing the song to Ellie. But they didn't have to do that, but they did that, and it makes sense because it's like you're not just watching this, you're participating in it. And that's one of the things that I had like irritations with some like first person shooters, because they don't let you interact with situations that happen. Something like this, not only are you watching this, but now that you're kind of interacting with it, it makes you really feel like you're actually doing this. And that's the whole thing. You are, because the player itself is the one that's doing this.
yeah, and I think I'm trying to find it just to make sure what song he's playing because I know the one at the so I don't know how to say this. So, because I don't want to go past where we're talking about
Right,
here,
right.
but I know one of the songs is covered by Pearl Jam, I believe. So
Okay.
I feel like this is the song. I'm trying to remember exactly when he's singing with to Ellie here, or if it's a made up song. But in one of the portions where you see him strum the guitar, it's from oh actually yeah I think yeah, looking at it now. I think it's the
Okay.
beginning of it, but it's a Pearl Jam song. It's called Future Days.
Okay. Okay.
So there's a little fun fact for you there if
Huh.
people didn't know. I had no
I didn't
idea.
know that. I
Yeah,
didn't
I
know
was
that
like,
either.
because at first I'm like I was watching a spoiler cast from the kind of funny games, and they
Mhm.
had Neil Druckmann on there, Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, and they
Wow.
mentioned that song, and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that was a like a real. I thought he just made it up or what have
Yeah.
you, but yeah, so it's a Pearl Jam song,
But it's so
Future Days.
but that's the thing. It said it's so convincing, and it's also him actually singing that, the actual actor itself, and
Well,
it's not. Well, is it is it not?
I I don't know. So I saw something just as I was looking. It said something because I know Troy Baker. He actually can sing, but then I just saw something saying he may have not. I don't know. I'll look
Okay.
into it. But
Well,
but if it,
let's
I'm sure it's him singing. It's got to be Troy.
yeah.
Like he fucking
Right.
can sing his ass off. So
Right. But I mean, that's just for something like that. Like we're just talking about just a song. That's one of the things. Like we haven't even. This is the one thing that's just interesting about this game. We haven't even talked about the actual gameplay.
oh yeah,
We didn't even talk about that.
nope.
Like, how do you talk about a game, and we're not even focusing on the mechanics, the improvements that they've done. Everything that they've done has been a complete shift from this game. The improvements on what we talked about, and some of the things that were the kind of the nitpicks that they fixed, and like even the way that you actually use your stuff, your equipment, is all fleshed out. Like they took what they did and they just said, okay, now this is what we're going to do with this, and it's going to improve on what you're doing, and it's going to make sense. That kind of scene where you would see the character when they would do a cutscene, their backpack would disappear and their equipment and everything would disappear.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, they make a point to keep that in there. Like they made they don't they're not taking away any kind of details away from you. Like the improvements that they've done are just it's an incredible achievement that they've done. But we're not even talking about that. We're talking about just the beginning feelings of this game, because that's what was so like incredible about the first one, is that after the first 20 minutes you were hooked. I was
Mm-hmm.
hooked. I never experienced something like that, and I wanted to see if this one was going to kind of give me that, and it gave me that, but also it earned it. It earned everything that it did, and it's something obviously that you're hoping is not going to happen. But it's like, this is the world. This is the world that they're in, and it's so reminded of like The Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so shitty,
Mm-hmm.
because you want these characters to prosper. You want them to survive, but you know the reality of what they're doing.
Yeah, and just like even when they're talking in her house, and it's funny. Like in the first game, she's telling all those pun jokes and found that
Yes.
pun book or what have you,
Yes.
and then he, of
Yes.
course, and this is another. I told you he's trying to like get her back.
Yeah.
Is he's telling corny joke that he forgot, and then towards the end after he
Right.
played the song before he leaves, she's like, oh, did you remember the joke because he forgot? And I don't, do you remember it? Because I think you texted it to me something about
Yeah.
a clock or something, or
Yeah. He said, what's the downside of eating a clock?
yeah, that's
And
the
then
one.
she's like, what? And he goes, it's time consuming.
Yeah. So it's just like she was like, oh, that's so dumb, and she said it with
Yeah.
a smirk, but you could tell it's like, oh man, like she's all right, he's trying to like win her back, this is cool.
But I mean, this is really just method acting right here, because like he's walking away, and he's like, okay, well, have a good night. And then
Mm-hmm.
she stops him, because she's paying attention to what he's saying, and he mentioned a joke, and he
Mm-hmm.
could have left it at that. But there's this right when he's walking away, she stops him. She's like, did you remember the joke?
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like stands there for a second, and he's like, yeah. And then he puts his hand, his like he like leans up against the actual edge of the door, and he puts his hand up and he's kind of leaning into it, and then he's like, yeah. He's like, I remember it. Like he's kind of like, it's these small little things that they do with this. It's like they've improved on capturing these actors flawlessly, because there's small little gestures. He makes a little hand gesture. He looks up. Like this stuff is just not. It's
They're
I'm at a
paying to,
loss for I'm just at a loss for words, because
yeah,
it's so well done. Like
they're paying attention to details. Like that's the
everything.
biggest thing. And then you can tell that she still cares for him. Of course
Right.
she does. You know,
Yeah.
if she didn't care, she would have just let him go and not even bothered asking if
Right.
he remembered the joke. Something as
Right.
simple as that, you could tell, like, of course she still cares. But
Right.
she's like still mad about it.
And isn't it fitting that right after that it tells you, gives you the title, The Last of Us Part 2, but then
Mm-hmm.
it also fast forwards 4 years, exactly the same way that the game starts. 20 was it 20 years later? And when Joel, after he loses his daughter Sarah, it's 20
I
years later, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happens in this one. It's 4 years later, and she gets woken up by something. Someone's knocking at the door.
Mm-hmm.
Same exact thing, man.
Yeah.
The same exact thing that they're doing, and it's just like, they, she just basically just she overslept on something that they were going to be doing, and
Mm-hmm.
the new person that gets introduced is Jesse,
Yep. I love
and
this. I love this. That
yeah,
guy's
and it's
my
just
boy.
I even like the back and forth that they have with each other. He's just like, "Oh, you overslept," and then she's like, "Oh yeah, because of what happened last night," and they allude to
Yeah,
something
I love
happening
that.
where she accidentally she kissed another girl, and in the story with with Ellie is that she's gay. She's not straight.
Mm-hmm.
And if you played the Left Behind DLC, you'll know more about that. It's kind of maybe her first girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And this one they kind of allude to that there was some sort of kiss, and it just so happened this guy Jesse was dating her, and it's not until like a week after they had broken up that she had this incident that they're talking about, this kiss.
Yep.
And the way he's just looking, he's like, man, you're not even waiting a weekend.
Yeah.
You're cruising on my girl already.
I love that line. That's so
Yeah,
funny. Yeah. But
it's like you're making a move.
yeah. And just showing how adult as like he's talking to Ellie about the whole situation, because she's like,
Yeah,
oh my bad, like dude, like whatever, and he's like, oh, it's all good, like he's okay with it. Normally like the different personalities of people will probably be
yeah,
like jealous or pissed off
yes,
about it, but he's
yes,
like kind of live and let go kind of person, which
right,
I do. It's very refreshing as a character that he is. But to kind of backtrack, I don't know if you noticed this because we didn't talk about this, is when you look outside Ellie's window in that room, I don't know if you noticed there's a rabbit out there, and during this time period, it's in the snow. So
mm-hmm.
it gave me, and like we're talking about in comparison to the original game, and just the way that they're adding stuff or calling back to certain things is, it reminded me of the scene where you first start playing as Ellie on your own in the winter scene, and then she strings out her bow and kills a rabbit and kills it. And that's the first thing you see when after
That's
Joel gets
right.
hurt. Joel
That's
gets
right.
hurt in the first game, and then you're like, oh shit, and then it says winter, and then all you see is a arrow hitting a rabbit, and then it starts up, and then she's
Right.
tracking after it, a deer and so forth, and it keeps going. But I kind of noticed that, and I'm like, why would they put that there? I'm like, I feel
Right.
like it's a lot of just a callback to the first game. So I noticed that, and of course we both noticed that if you're looking around in a room,
Mm-hmm.
of course there's a robot toy, which is the same exact one that Sam, the little boy from the first game, Sam and Henry, were the ones you were fighting with. Um, but it was on her shelf. And when I first saw that, and I know I was telling you, like when I was playing this game, I paused a lot to
Yeah.
write down notes in my thoughts because I know I was going to
Yeah.
forget. There's just no way I was going to remember everything. But
Right.
I ended up looking up just to make sure it exactly was the same one, the same colors and everything, and not just
Mm-hmm.
some replica or something that looks similar. But
Mm-hmm.
it's exactly the same one, which
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck yeah, dude. I
Yeah.
love that they, again, paying attention to all the subtle details, putting so much thought and effort into this game. That's why
Yeah.
I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, I mean, even right when you get like right when Jesse wakes you up because you're late for something, um, you get out of your house and you have your backpack on, and you can actually look through your bag immediately, and that's actually what I did immediately because I was like, I want to see if I can be able to get into my bag. That's one of the things that I always do. I always try to see what I can get away with if something's available for you to do, like.
I didn't
Um,
even do that. I didn't even realize it. I didn't even
yeah,
try. So you're like the beginning Pokemon. Look in your
yeah,
PC first,
yeah.
just in case they have a potion in there.
Yeah, yeah. So like her journal that pops up, which is great because now they're incorporating the ability that she's actually writing stuff in, which you don't realize, which is what they did with the Uncharted franchise,
Mm-hmm.
where Nathan Drake would have his actual notepad with him, and whenever he would see something, he would sketch it in, like he'd actually draw it, or he'd write codes, and that was a way for you to get through some of the environmental puzzles.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what she says because I actually do. I have it keyed up because I remembered it. It says, Dina asked if I want to go to the dance, and she touched my arm. Ugh, I'm so delusional. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me zoom in real quick. Okay, here we go. So delusional. Don't be an idiot. She's like with everybody. Don't give up your friendship. Don't fuck up your friendship. Don't fuck up your friendship. Tonight was crazy. I feel scared, anxious. Just gotta sleep it off. It's just
Yeah, and I
these
didn't
little things.
even read that
Yeah,
until later on, like when I was able to be like out and about. And then I looked at the book and I went back a couple of pages
yeah,
just to see that. So that's the time that I actually read it, but I didn't
right.
do it in the beginning. I didn't even think to do that.
Yeah, I mean the very end. Just she says, "Tonight was crazy. I feel scared, elated, anxious. Just gotta sleep it off." Like these small little things that they're putting in here. It's like now you have the ability to be able to read these stuffs, and she actually started drawing like the stuff that you start encountering, which was one of the things that I had talked about. That I was just like, oh, I really like when you can be able to like put stuff in. If you're using a map and you don't know where you are, you can jot down the stuff. They incorporate that because they thought of all these things, the things that they couldn't do in the first game. Now they're actually doing, and everything's just so polished now. Like even when you go to your workbenches, like your workbenches has some animation that even
I love that.
the small little thing of flicking the on switch on, like that's
Mm-hmm.
on the workbench that you actually click on to turn the light on.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do that before. Before the light was always on. It was just an afterthought.
Yep.
But this is the thing. They paid attention to that. So
I also looked at, so I'm looking through my photos too on my phone, and I just noticed because that the her desk, with the robot, I wanted to make sure I take a picture of it. But
yeah.
looking at her desk now with that there, I just
Hmm.
noticed that she has a astronaut, like kind of
Yes.
action figure, whatever you want to call it, statue
Yeah.
of an astronaut, and there's some books on there about astronomy.
Hmm.
Are the Planets Inherited is one's called, and there's a couple of them on there as well. But if people remember that in the first game, when Joel asked her like what she wanted to be, like basically when she grew up, and that was
Right.
the one of the things was
Yeah.
an astronaut.
Yeah.
So it just, again, the small details that they added in here, and
Yeah.
you could pay attention to one or not. If you're still gonna enjoy the story, but this is like for us to that kind of go through and try to dissect every small thing that we can because we love
Yeah.
this series.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal that they did that.
Well, you're also seeing more that we're also seeing something that we've never seen before. We've never seen a thriving community in the wake of all of this. We've never seen that. We've seen the aftermath of something that happened, and you walk into people's lives. These people that would have lived here at some point, and you read these notes or you see the bodies, you see the remnants of it. But now you're actually seeing it while it's happening, and the part that really got me is when you actually start walking through the town because Jesse makes a point to like you're walking towards something. I always look at everything, and I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that these little kids were playing in the snow. And when I was looking at that, like I like to hear some of the town folk like when they're talking to each other. Um, I like stop and I'll listen in on what they're talking about, and I noticed that when I got close to these kids that are all playing in this little snow pile, they're kind of sliding down. They created like a little slide for them. One kid's making a snow angel. I had noticed that one of maybe the parents were arguing with each other, saying, "When are you going to tell the kids about what their life is, what the reality is?" And the mother, or it must have been the mom. She was just like, "I don't want to tell them now because they're too young. Let them just enjoy their childhood." And the father must have been like, "No, I like they need to know. They need to know to survive." But this is all happening while you're just seeing these kids that are just playing, and it's just, man, it's like you hope that these kids would be able to survive and see themselves get older. But right now they're just kids. They don't know what the reality is.
And they also don't
Like,
know what's different, right? Like just similar to
right,
like how Ellie is. She didn't know what happened before the outbreak. Joel does. He clearly saw how it was
right,
before and how
right,
everyone lived, and now it's not. But even
right.
like just backtracking a little bit of Ellie and Jesse talking as
Yeah,
they're leading up to where they're headed. I think it was one of the bars. Um, but he's talking about how hey, just a heads up, you're the talk of the town right now. She's like, what?
right,
Oh my god,
right,
what? And he's like, well, remember the dance yesterday? Apparently you like we said, kissed a girl, kissed Dina, which is Jesse's ex. And there was a moment where he says, oh, the one guy called you a not nice word, and she was like,
right.
yeah. And then she was like, yeah. And then Joel stepped in and then punched him. She's like, no, it was more of like a
Right.
shove. And
Yeah.
he was like, oh, And then she said something about, oh, he said something like, oh, and you got mad at him, mad at Joel for doing that. That was weird. And
Right.
she was like,
Yeah.
yeah, and you can kind of like, we don't know what happened exactly in that dance room or what have you, other than
Right.
just them bantering back and forth between it. But
Right.
I love that kind of just conversation happening. You can see another reason why, Ellie's mad at Joel for something, that popping up. Like, he didn't need to step in. I feel like, again, this is what I'm talking about. She's older. She feels like she can fend for herself. She's
Right.
seen and done a lot.
Right.
She can take care of herself. She doesn't need her father figure to step in
Right.
all the time and try to save her, because she can handle it. And Joel can't help it. Of course he can't help it.
Right.
Because I think during this moment too, Jesse mentions that Joel has been like a little bit more like hands-on, even with Jesse, like, oh, okay, make sure she's doing this patrol, but make sure you guys don't go down this route.
Right.
Like, kind of
Right.
just interfering, and of
Right.
course it's all out of love and all that of protection, but of course she doesn't want that. And that's
Right.
where we're at, where they're kind of butting heads. But yeah, so as we move on, they're gonna go into the bar and
Yeah, and that's one of the things too. I do like the fact that they gave us that trailer and it's not in the game. From what I understand and from what I've been seeing since that time, because we're only talking about this time of where it leads into,
which one?
uh, the scene at the dance. We saw the trailer
Mm,
for that. We saw that was the actual the reveal trailer.
mm-hmm,
That when you saw that they actually had to dance. Remember when Dina was like talking to
mm-hmm.
her, and she's like everybody's watching. She's like good, and then they when they kiss, she's like people should be afraid of you. And then that's when it cuts to Ellie where she's cutting some guy's throat out. You
Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah, I do
Okay.
remember it. So I will neither confirm nor deny that
Okay.
scene is in the game or not.
Okay. So at this point right now, I don't know that this happened, but I like the fact that they didn't start with that.
Yeah.
Like that could have easily been the intro instead of it being Joel and Tommy talking.
See,
You could
that's
have
exactly what I
you could have
thought was
gone
going to
different
happen.
routes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to happen, like you just said. I was like, I thought it was going to. Well, originally I thought it was going to open up with the two girls. Like I told you, it was like, oh, they're going to be on the horseback. They're going to try to find supplies or what have you, and
Right.
try to, you know what I mean.
Right.
So, but I also in the back of my head was like, because that's a little bit more exciting than starting off with a dance. So I
Right.
was like, oh, but I thought, that part was going to be in the game. Well, again, I don't know. We're not going to talk about it. I know for
Right.
sure what
Right.
actually ended up being in the game. Obviously, I beat
Right.
it, but we're only talking about the first few hours. But I thought too that they would open up with that dance too, but they didn't. Obviously,
No, they did not. But I just, the part of where they're going into being able to like talk to this new character named Maria, which you find out is Tommy's wife.
that's the one from the first game, right? Wasn't that his like girlfriend at the time?
I believe she was mentioned, but I don't remember that offhand.
Because I feel
But
like
they could be.
she ended up, because she was there in the first
That's right.
game,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
she was
She
showing
was.
Ellie the horse, or
That's
whatever the
right.
horse is out
That's
there or
right.
whatever.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So I just the exchange that they have, and I kind of forgot that Jesse said to Ellie, "You're the talk of the town," because I noticed after this scene when Maria uh, tells, "Hey, Seth is here," the bartender, the one that said that awful word to her, because he saw them two kissing, Dina and Ellie kissing. Um, when I noticed that, kind of forgot that Jesse said that to Ellie, that you're the talk of the town. I noticed that everyone's looking at you, and I'm
Yeah,
like, why? I was like, why the
yeah,
fuck is everybody looking at me? Like everybody knows who you are, and it's just like, oh, that's right, because Ellie is just a very closed kind of person. She doesn't let anybody really in. Like she's always very jaded and very like distant, and she's always been like that. And for her to kind of expose herself in front of everybody, I think that's where she's just like she's not comfortable with it, and it's just like, okay, well, I guess everybody knows, and it's like, okay, whatever. And even when Seth apologizes and gives her some sandwiches, Jesse says, "Hey, what you got there?" And she's like,
yeah.
"Some." bigot sandwich. And she gives it to him, and
Yeah.
he's like, smells good.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't take it. He doesn't take it because he's just like, oh, it's food. What? I don't care.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it. Sure, whatever.
Yeah,
I don't care.
and it just I love that even though that bartender apologized, she understands that no matter what, and it's so strange that that's even a reality because the way that their lives are, you would think that sexuality wouldn't even be something that people should question anymore, but no matter what you do, people are still going to have their own perspective of like or way of thinking no matter what, no matter in the dawn of the end of the world, people are still going to see things very closed-minded. No matter what, you're not going to have that all inspiring where everybody is loving to each other. You're still going to have that because unfortunately human behavior and people's ability to be able to either accept or deny or not even want to express their feelings on certain things that they don't believe are right, or maybe religion or whatever. I just i love the fact that they even mentioned that, and she still didn't even take it. She's just like, I don't care. Like, I don't care what you said, because truly, that's who you really are. No matter how you try to paint it up and try to give my forgiveness, we saw who you really are, and unfortunately, that's probably the reason why she never wanted to show herself like that, because people are going to be like that, and that's just another thing that's like I don't need people to know about that. Like, that's my own personal business.
Yeah, and that's the thing with that. Of course, people make mistakes, and it showed his true colors because he we don't know what happened exactly
Right.
during that time. We're just going and getting these small things, but clearly he's trying to apologize for something he
Right.
clearly did wrong, and
Right.
Maria's trying to mend the fences. And like I said from the beginning about them being a part of this town, is that there's so many different ideas, different personalities, different thoughts in the way that people should, let's say, conduct their business in this town, or let's say
Mm-hmm.
they conduct, themselves or their children, how they behave. So there's a lot of different, and it's very difficult to have everybody on the same page with things.
Right.
So, it, but we're getting all of these type of nuanced story elements between these characters, and it's so fleshed out, and it's so like as we're going, we're not this. I mean, the gameplay, we're just walking right during this time,
Right.
but all of this is building up to show that this town is real. I
Yes.
love walking through this and talking with Jesse because it's like, oh man, finally, like you can feel safe here. Even me,
Yeah.
like walking through as a player, I'm like, oh great, like we at least
Yeah.
have some place to come back to. And
Right.
they're on patrols, like killing these infected, and they all have their specific jobs and
Right.
things like that. You can walk around and someone is in charge of meat and cutting down animals, and then you can
Right.
see all these different things happening. People are selling stuff, someone has a bar, someone's doing this, someone's doing that. So it just fleshes everything out in a way where
Mm-hmm.
I just love the attention to detail with all of
Yeah.
these.
And they even have like a nightlife. Like, they even have like a little movie theater,
Mm-hmm.
and then for the kids they have a daycare. Like, they have to teach the kids because there's people that are having children, and kids are growing up, and even though in the midst of all of this they still are trying to keep some sort of
Mm-hmm.
community and society going. And I made a point to actually stop before that scene, right before you actually talk to Maria, where she's like, hey, let me talk to you about something. I made a point to not go over there because I wanted to see everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just looking through the actual window and seeing the teacher actually talking to the kids, and like he's like reading them a story, and he's not looking at it, but he's showing them the text, and he's just reading to them. Obviously, you can't hear it, but you can see it. And I'm just like, these small little touches in here are just like, man, I hope this kind of gives people, more developers or other publishers, a clear kind of path on like how to be able to make these characters not like, I feel like what Naughty Dog is doing is they're taking everybody to the next phase of what games can do,
Yeah.
because now the games are very at the core, they're very at their adolescence. And I feel like, and I say adolescence in the meaning of like, kill this person, go to here, go to this checkpoint,
Mm-hmm.
finish this, collect this, whatever. And it's just basically do what you're instructed. Your hand is being held, and just do what you're supposed to do. And
Yep.
I think The Last of Us really kind of broke through because the characters are not superhuman. They are fully realized, and also they take time to be able to take enemies down. You're never in a good spot. You're always outnumbered. You always have the odds against you. And in this game, not only do they do that, but they do something so interesting that it makes you really think about how these stories have to be structured by either a single person. I mean, I'm sure Neil Druckmann has other people that are helping him along with this, but this guy's clear vision of what he wants is just so amazing because it's just everything is accounted for. Everything. And it's amazing to see this because you're walking through an actual game that you're eventually going to get into and actually start finding out what's going on. And you have to just kill some infected, you'll find people, whatever. But before you even get up to that, all this lead up into it is just this world building that they're expanding on that they never touched on. And this is stuff you've never seen before. And I love that you once again that you the player and everything that's in this is earned. You feel like everything that happens, they've set it up for you to either succeed or to fail. And you're going to see success or you're going to see failure. Whatever they wanted the story to be at this point, you don't know what's going to happen because it feels like the world that they're living in has become a lot bigger, but yet when they step out of that community, they're back in the real world. The reality is there. It's glaring them in the face. It's not going away. But I love what they're doing with this. I'm sorry. I just went on a tangent on
No,
this, but
no, it's okay. And that
it's just
you're right though, because I specifically wrote this down for like a later area, and I'm glad I found it in my notes. I literally, just so everyone knows, I have 9 pages of notes for this game. I'm not fucking
I have
joking.
I have 3. But I
Yeah.
also but
But you
but
remember
I
more than I do. Like, I have to actually write this stuff down because I my brain, I'm so forgetful. So I need to write stuff down.
well,
Um,
I remember this stuff because I stop and I actually just want to actually see this stuff before it even happens. But also too, I'm recording the actual the gameplay and I'm actually posting all of this on YouTube, which
mhm.
I've already gotten up to like episode 3. So I'm kind of at the point where we're talking about the fourth episode is kind of solidifying kind of what we're getting to in this kind of first impressions kind of overall story of where what we think of the game. Um, so I've made a point to actually do that because I can be able to use that as a reference point and go back to it and actually see things that I forgot about. And
That's
not even having to do that, I can recall all this stuff. Like
That's good.
that's
I'm just blaming everything on alcohol, honestly.
okay,
So obviously, I beat the game, and I'm playing on my
right,
second playthrough. And of course, there's things
right,
I'm gonna miss. There's so many
right.
things that are in this game, but I made it a point to write down that Naughty Dog has convinced me, based off of all of these games, whether it's the Last of Us series or the Uncharted series, up to where
Hmm.
we're on now. They're pushing the
Yeah,
game medium forward. They're
yeah,
they're pushing other developers. I literally wrote, they're at the same time pushing developers to be better by showing what games can do.
right.
And watching the spoiler cast with the Kind of Funny crew. Well, it was just Greg, but it had obviously Neil Druckmann, Ashley Johnson, and Troy Baker.
That's incredible, man. That's
The
incredible.
fact that he got, I mean, they're all friends, but the fact that he
Right,
got them to like talk about it, you know, everybody knows that I love Metal Gear, right?
right.
Neil Druckmann has said in that podcast one of his favorite video game series is Metal Gear.
Wow.
So like, there's so many things that Kojima has done to push the medium forward. And I listened to I almost finished the podcast that you had with Enka. So
Yes,
okay,
Peter.
Peter.
Uh,
So
eh,
he was on, and I listened to that. I was unfortunately not able to join in. Um,
Anko. Anko.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was on there talking about, how even, Eco and Shadow of the Colossus and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I, unfortunately, when you guys were talking about it, I at least know the franchises. I know the developers that worked on those games, but they
Right.
push the medium forward too. Like there's so
Mm-hmm.
many different, developers, not just him. I mean, a shout out to, cause Neil Druckmann is one of the writers, obviously, but Hallie Gross is also one of the writers on this game too. Probably
Mm-hmm.
butchering her name. I'm sorry. But she also, had a hand in developing. It's not just Neil Druckmann, it's not just these actors that are playing these characters, but it's the person that I mentioned earlier, making sure that the window with the condensation or the rain on the
Mm-hmm.
window looks good, or how
Mm-hmm.
people hold guns, like it's all a team effort. It's the same thing with Kojima. Like he has
Right.
a fucking solid team that he has to like build these games and try to make you feel emotion. Like clearly Kojima was into movies and he wanted to
Right.
translate them, make you feel the way you do in a game. And I
Right.
feel like in this game specifically too, it makes you feel all these types of different emotions. It's like a roller coaster. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean the way that they're not pandering to the player. They're not, and I say pandering in the way of teaching you new mechanics or teaching you the games within the. They're not giving you a tutorial. You don't realize, but they're giving you a tutorial in this story, and it's woven into it where they put little scenes where the when you meet up with Dina for the first time and you get introduced to her,
Mm-hmm.
she's running. She's maybe just one of the people that are running the daycare, and the kids are just playing with throwing snowballs at each other, and you end up learning the mechanics of how to be able to throw things
Mm-hmm.
at moving characters
Mm-hmm.
or moving enemies. Whereas before you had kind of the ability, but you would stop and you had to throw it, and you had to be like you had to stop and actually be able to throw it. But now you can move. But the brilliant thing about that is there's a scene where right after you guys play, you have a little contest. All the kids dogpile on Dina,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to actually pull one of the kids off. Which is the game is teaching you that when your other companion or whoever gets in trouble, you're pulling whatever thing is on them off of you, off of that person.
Mm-hmm.
But they've done it in such a way where it makes sense, but they're just teaching you these little rules. Little do you know that this is the things that you're going to be learning within the game, but it's woven into it where you're participating in this story. It's there. I don't see any checkpoints. I don't see any
Mm-hmm.
wave point of like go here, go to this.
Mm-hmm.
There is. They do actually introduce that in the game, and I really don't like it, and I want to be able to take it off. I don't know if there's an option for it, but I'm gonna look
Which
for it
part?
next time.
Which part?
When so like in the first one when you give you the game would give you a hint, it would you can hit
They, yeah.
the left trigger left thumbstick in,
Mm-hmm.
and the camera would you would turn to like whatever's the main point of interest,
Yeah.
and it would not highlight it, but you would look and you're like, oh, okay, I need to go here.
Yeah.
This one they do the same thing, but a little marker stays
Yes.
on where you're supposed to look.
Yes.
I when I first saw that, I didn't like that because I've noticed the game kind of rushes you a little. Like when I'm looking around, I do that a lot.
Yeah.
They kind of rush you into that, and I wonder if there's a way to turn that off.
I'm sure you can because like they added
Yeah,
so many different accessibility modes on here. Like
yeah,
even so to kind of I'm trying to like backtrack a little bit without going too far back. But the hinting thing, I get it because I'm the same way. Like there was multiple times throughout this game where like I know where I'm going, I know what I'm gonna
right,
do, I know I need to
right,
go up here or do this or go there.
right.
But of course, I want to make sure I'm collecting all of the resources
Mm-hmm.
and finding the right things. And yeah,
Right,
of course, it's going to take me a while, but it's kind of hard to kind of determine that because other people might not want to explore, might not want to look through everything. And they probably, based off of time frame of how long they're in a certain area, they're like, oh, do you want a hint to like kind of
right,
progress them? And maybe someone's not that savvy with games, that they want to make sure to kind of get them from point A to point B without being
Right.
annoying. But I'm 100% sure there's a way to turn off hints. Like, I mean, every game kind of has that ability, and the fact that they added so many different accessibility modes
Right.
in this
Right.
game is ridiculous. Like, when we talked about difficulty, there's a custom options difficulty. I don't know if it got opened up after I played the first game or not, but there's a way to let me just scroll down to my notes here. So in the custom difficulty, you can adjust different parts of the game. So all right, so the first one's player. So you can adjust difficulty, the amount of damage the player takes from enemies, frequency of mid encounters, dynamic checkpoints. There's another section for enemies. It says the accuracy of an enemy with gunfire,
Wow.
frequency of projectiles, aggression, complexity of their melee combos, movement speed, high threat enemies, custom tuning. So you can actually go through and use this custom difficulty and kind of adjust anything in a slider in a way that any kind of thing you want. You can also adjust allies, so how aggressive they are in combat to help you.
Right.
Frequency with which allies can kill enemies, your stealth, enemies' perception through vision and hearing and smell. Later on we obviously know in the trailers that they showed with dogs, so obviously smell.
Right.
Length of grace period before enemies will alert each other after something they found, or you killed somebody or one of their friends. Resources, you can adjust the quantity of animation, resources, durability of melee. So they added a lot of different things with this. But to go into just a little bit, when you're at the bar with Maria and you get the sandwiches, did you find the first card? Yeah, of course you did. You look at everything.
Yeah, of course.
I did too.
I even read the letter that was on the bar that
Yeah.
you can't even actually see,
Yeah.
that you can't pick up.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have it. Hold on, I'm pulling it up right now.
The
That's
trading
great.
cards, yeah.
That's no, not the trading card. There's a note that's on the bar.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Did you read that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I saw that part and I was just like, oh, I wonder if that's a clue. It says, come by the something store location. I'm about finished. Will something ask you? Thank you. Thanks for breakfast, Jeremy. Like, I noticed that. Like, I saw that. I was like, oh, I wonder if I could pick that up, because the game, you obviously pick up notes.
Yes.
And you could be able to see that, and that handwritten way that they've done that, and these little stories that they give within these characters, and like you get to see like what happened before. I love that they did that. I love that they're still incorporating that.
Yeah, and it brings and adds to how the world is, and it fleshes it out. Like, there's another one before you get to the bar on the right hand side outside. It's kind of, I don't know if you found that one too. You might, I'm sure you have. But before, so the bar is on the left, and then you go to the right, and behind some things there's a note there. I don't remember exactly what it actually was written on there, but it's just another example of them paying attention to things. And like, leading up to before the snowball fight that you're talking about, and Maria was asking Ellie, like, hey, are you and Joel, like, you good? Like, what's happening? Like, you should probably talk to him. And she's like, we're good. She's like, okay, I'm just making sure, like, we're all right, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So just those subtle hints. But of course, then after the snowball fight, I love that, like you said, they're introducing mechanics without forcing it. It almost like, oh yeah, of course we're playing, but of course these are things that you learn. You throwing the bottle at an enemy, and you can hit R2 and it does it, and it kind of goes to them. So they kind of walk out of there, and they're onto their patrol. So you walk and you keep walking, and then you get your horses, and then Jesse's out there telling the recruits, like, hey, be safe out there. If there's something that you feel like you can't handle, come back home, like, do your best to get out of there, don't be a hero, kind of thing. And so they're kind of off on their patrol, because leading up to it, originally Jesse is supposed to relieve Joel and Tommy,
Mm-hmm.
but they haven't made it to their next post yet, or something along
Right.
those lines. And he's supposed to go and do that. And then there's no one taking over the patrol of the one that he's supposed to do. And
Right.
so Maria's like, hey, Ellie, have you done this patrol before? And she's like, no. And then Jesse interjects and goes, well, Dina has plenty of times. So it's weird because like it's his ex-girlfriend, but he's like trying to force both of them, I guess, to be together. It's kind of funny. But just leading up, so they're about to get on their horses and go on their patrol after that.
Yeah. So at that point, you get to see like, okay, you're gonna go on patrol with Dina because you two are paired up together, and all of a sudden you get introduced to this person that this woman that wakes up in some sort of like house, and there's a group of other people that are sleeping in sleeping bags. And I think the thing that kind of caught me off guard from the beginning, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, what's happening? Like, I'm so not used to seeing other different characters and
Same.
seeing like they're a different story. I'm like, wait a
Mm-hmm.
minute, what's happening? Like, why am I seeing this? Am I going to be a part of this? Like, I don't want it. Like, it put me in a weird spot. I'm like, wait a minute, am I going to have to choose what I'm going to be doing with main characters that I know, and these people that I have like no control over because they're the player that I'm playing? I'm like, I went through a whole bunch of things when I saw this. I was like, wait a minute, what's happening? But that's also the best thing about this is that they've extended the story to not only be the main characters, but now you actually get to see another side that you obviously would never see, but that's just the expansion of this game. It's even bigger where now the story is not just those people, but you also have another story that's kind of woven into it that is basically aligned with what's happening. And she even wakes up. I noticed that right off the bat. She wakes up like she's kind of like thinks she might be having like a heart attack or something. She like wakes up and like holds her heart.
Or even like a
And
nightmare. I feel like she had like a
yeah,
nightmare. She was dreaming, and then she just like woke up and was like, oh fuck, what the hell?
yeah, like you're waking up from like a bad dream. It's like wait a minute, you live in a bad dream. Like this is the world. Um, but these two people, you don't know who they are. But the guy, he's just standing outside. He's standing inside, just looking out the window,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, hey, I got something I want to show you. And you're just like, what's happening? Like, who are these people? What are you doing? And when I first saw this, I just like I stopped for a second because you walk out of the house, out of the garage, and you take control of this girl, and you don't know who she is,
No,
and
and what I took it as we're leading up to all this, like we talked about, is
yeah,
further world building. I was like, oh, we're just gonna get different perspectives from different people we haven't come across yet. Maybe this is
hmm
something cool, but yeah.
right. Yeah, I did not know what was happening with this. I don't know who this character is.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's new characters and stuff like that that you never seen before. Um, but you find out after this little journey that this guy tells this girl to go on. He's like, I want to show you something. You find out that his name is the guy. His name is Owen,
Mm-hmm.
and the woman that you're actually playing as, controlling her. Her name is Abby.
Yep.
And what do you find out? You find out that they actually discovered the Jackson compound,
Yep.
and they have their own objective.
Yep.
They're there specifically to find somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and wherever they came from, they are the threat that I was talking about. That are people are when you take everything away and they're looking for something, that's where they're the most dangerous
Yeah,
because
because
they have nothing to lose.
yeah, and they spoke when they were talking on that ridge, and even leading up to it, she's going through the snow and just like bantering back and forth, and they're talking about Mel, a different character, and
Right.
you clearly can kind of start telling and kind of just guesstimating that they of course know each other for so long, and they're going back and forth about she mentions Mel, or are you going to break up with Mel? And he's like, oh no, that's not what I'm talking about. And then
Right.
mentions something with her like, oh, why do you want to get back together? And I forget the exact wording, but and then she was like, no, we had our kind of thing. So you can tell that they had a past and that they had a relationship prior.
Right.
And then they're standing there on the ridge, and he shows her the town, and how like, oh, okay, so there's a patrol over here, they might have like some information like this and that.
Right.
And he kind of backtracks, and she's like, what, you don't want to do this? And he's like, I don't. Mel's pregnant. And he blurts it out, and
Right.
she clearly upset. She's like, oh fuck, like, so you're just not gonna, you go through all this and you're just not gonna help me, kind of thing. And you can kind of get that back and forth, or that difficult conversation to have with her, but
Right.
clearly she's not having it. But it's cool seeing that people you didn't even know who it was. Like when he's
Right.
staring out the window and she wakes up, it just says like girl or guy speaking. Like I had
Right.
subtitles on, so it
Yeah.
just showed that. And then
Yeah.
of course when she mentions like, "Hey Owen," and then it goes, "Oh, now that's, you clearly know that's
Right.
Owen." Oh, hey
Right.
Abby. But I enjoyed their banter back and forth, and then she's clearly another thing you notice is she's scared of heights. Like she's walking
Mm-hmm.
or trying to go through, and she almost kind of like not falls, but like a little piece of it where she's walking around a cliff kind of falls, and she's like, "Oh shit!" Like you can tell that. So all these little visual cues, and them with the story, and their interactions, and then just the writing, so fucking
Yeah.
good. But yeah.
Yeah. I really didn't know what was happening at this point. I knew obviously that these are the bad. These are the people that are deemed to be bad. But it's like, what's really like, what are they doing, like what are they looking for?
Mm-hmm.
Because they mentioned they're just like, okay, there's a patrol here, like we can get someone's information, we can grab somebody and get them to talk. And they're like, he's like, okay, and then what, because there's too many of them. And they're just like, hey, we're kind of out of our league at this point. If I tell the rest of the group, they're going to want to leave. Like
Oh
they're not
yeah,
going to want
yeah.
to put themselves in danger with that.
Right.
And she's just like, no, I'm not having it. So whatever her objective is, and you find out, but before all this, you don't know why she's so determined,
Mm-hmm.
but you know that they're obviously looking for somebody. And you can kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
I started putting things together. I'm like, okay, who's she looking for?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? And through this whole journey, like you're just like, oh shit, I'm actually taking control of this person. And the scene right before that is Ellie and Dina taking off, and I'm like, oh shit, am I gonna interact with them?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's never happened before.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not gonna put myself where I'm gonna be the one hurting the main characters. Like I'm not gonna do that. But do you have a choice?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that they're gonna put you in situations like that. But the thing that they do show is now the infected are completely aggressive. Like these guys are swinging at you,
Yeah.
and now what you have, not only can you be able to, you can prone now, you can actually get down and crawl, but now you can actually dodge their attacks,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy because on my on my difficulty, the difficulty that I have is I have it set on survivor, which I didn't mention, but mine is on survivor, so mine is at the hardest. And even at its hardest, I feel like I stripped away the ammo. At first, it pops up the ammo in my health. So then at first I'm like, I don't like my ammo being there because I got so used to it not being there. So I took that off, and
Oh,
then it
the
just
HUD
shows.
you like just
Yeah,
eliminated? Oh shit. Okay.
yeah. So the only thing I can see is just my health. So that's the only thing I can see. Everything else is stripped away. But you can still see your ammo when you're like switching from one thing to another. But I mean that's the only way you can see it. Um, but I love the way that they show that, because now the infected, when you interact with them, when you're controlling as Abby, you see how aggressive they are.
I love it,
And
man. I love
and
the
and
ability to
and
like like just kind of dodge out of the way. But leading
yeah.
up to this part where she comes across one infected in the snow, she takes it out, but then you lead on to this other part. Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's so cool because you can see how hard it is and like how difficult it is to be able to take these things down. And even though it's in the middle of the winter time, it doesn't matter. Like these things are constantly going to come at you, like no matter what. And even when they're swiping at you, like they're just clawing at you like an animal. And your character that you're controlling as, she's pretty damn strong. Like she takes them down like with not a lot of actual effort. I mean, it takes a little effort, and once if they claw you a couple times, you can see like the character is actually really injured. But that's one thing that I really like about it. Like you can see now, like when you're injured, you see more of it. Like the
Mm-hmm.
character limps and like moves around, and the character even says something like, "Oh, my shoulder."
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, after you first encounter them, she's like, "Oh, my shoulder like is maybe out of place or something." I'm like, "Whoa, they didn't do that in the first game." But that's another thing that they do, man. That's another thing that just it's there.
Yeah, and they introduce like as you're playing with Abby and like killing some infected and getting into a house and it of course these tips are popping up and saying this is how you come up behind somebody or sneak kill them and things like that and leading
Right.
up to that sort of stuff that we noticed and we talked about a little bit off the podcast was the facial animations. Like if you notice how
Right.
like they animated these characters, and I just wanted to point out when I was on Twitter, there's Roger Clark who plays Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2 posted a tweet about
Mhm.
the Last of Us Part 2 capture being the best he has seen quote unquote seen to date. Like he's
Wow.
never seen it like this looking this good. I'm gonna
Wow.
butcher this name. I'm sorry. Neil Uchitel. It's Uchitel. A senior sound designer of Naughty Dog replied to Clark, breaking down how The Last of Us Part 2 facial animations are actually systematic and why that's significant. So I think you'll understand this a little bit
That's
better than
cool.
I am as far as you, because you're a game developer. But one thing you may have noticed is that all of the gameplay, not cinematic. So not cinematic.
Right.
The
Right.
gameplay, facial animations are systemic or systematic. I don't know how you want to
Mhm. Systemic.
systemic. So he goes on to say, it's not facial capture. It's an astounding system designed by animator Keith Pacello. He's not on Twitter. He goes to say, it's like nothing that anyone has ever seen in games. Quote, it makes it so that all the facial in the game doesn't need to be hand keyed. He writes, lines of dialogue are tagged with an emotion from a large list, and the character displays the emotion while saying the line seamlessly. Each character has their own emotion animation set. It's utterly brilliant. So
Wow.
again, this only applies to actual gameplay. Cinematic cutscenes were filmed by actors and don't employ the same algorithm. So that was
Mhm.
a really
Mhm.
cool thing that I came across when researching a lot more stuff about this game.
Yeah, because I mean, you can see it, especially when Abby is encountering the infected for the first time in the middle of this little snowstorm. The way that she grabs them and pulls them back and is holding them. If you turn around, like they change the way the camera like pulls back a little, and you're kind of you grab them and then you're pulling them backwards and like leaning them back towards you, and you're kind of like pulling them against towards the ground. But while she does that, she has her left arm around their throat, and then she has her gun on top of their head while she's holding it, and then she gets to a point and she breaks the neck, but you can look at her face and you can see how angry she is, and like the amount of struggle that she has to be able to do that, because it's not quick. Like
Yeah,
it takes its moment to do that,
but you
but it's
also
cool.
notice that it's easier for her to do it because she's stronger than Ellie. She looks
Right.
taller and more built like
Yeah.
than Ellie. So it seems like okay, you have Ellie who's a young kind of scrawny looking girl. Like she's trying
Mhm.
to take down infected. She can't do it like she can. She can't just like choke someone out. It's she has to use her butterfly knife or use her weapons at her disposal. She can't just come across something and be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I can choke it out." No. So you
Right.
can kind of already tell the differences between these two characters and the way that they play too.
Yeah. I
But
just
I enjoyed the
I
way
noticed that.
that they infected, the way that they showed in the snow. I just didn't
Yeah.
anticipate them coming out like that. Like there was, a few here and there, and then all of a sudden we get to after like leading through different, buildings and houses, and you're still playing as Abby, and all of a sudden you come across a point where to which all these infected start like almost like a gang, like all of them just find you and
Right.
running
Right.
after you,
Right.
and the sound design in this game got my heart pumping, and the way that
Yeah.
they in this moment where you're basically just running away from them, like you're not standing there standing your ground because you barely have any ammo, you're just like
Mhm.
fuck, I need a dip, and I need to get the fuck out of here. And
Hmm.
Neil Druckmann mentioned, like, there are times where you just have to run. Like, you have to
Yeah.
get out of a situation, and you can't sit there and just try to take people out. You just have to just run. So I
Yeah.
enjoy the fact that when you're playing as her, you're just running. And once you do it the right way, quote unquote, like, there is a clear path in a way to, like, get from point A to point B away from these. And the way that they land the infected in a way to kind of push you in the right direction is smart, game design. But just like that whole just running on the ice and just running away from these things, just your heart pumping, you just feel it. And it
Yeah.
just, like, I don't know, it adds to, again, the greatness of this.
Well, the intensity is really boosted up. I mean, you could tell that the infected are much more aggressive, and that would make sense because time itself for them, they're becoming more desperate. So there's eventually you're gonna at some point you may run out of the ones that are infected. Like they're like, I mean, they're not going to stop anyways. These things are just going to keep coming at you. But I mean, they're becoming more desperate and they're more aggressive. So I mean, the the part, because I mean we can go through each scene, but I want to kind of jump to the point where Abby is when they play, because you play as Abby and you get the infected, you encounter them, but then it goes back to Ellie and Dina, and they're doing their patrol, and they're having a lot of like they're having a lot of conversations about things that were going on, and like their life, and like what they would want their lives to be if they had a choice, things like that. Like, because you see these houses and you get to go inside, and that's one of the best things about it, is that now you're actually going inside these buildings, and it's a little bit more woven into like the actual that level, so it doesn't feel like you're just staying on the sidewalk or on the road. Now you can actually go inside a lot of these houses. But uh
I love being
it
able to explore more. Yeah, it opens up. It's
I
great.
love it, man.
It's great.
I love it. I love it. But then it gets to the point where it goes back to Abby, and you see her actually kind of trekking still through this kind of blizzard, and all of a sudden that's the part that you're talking about, where all these infected are just running at you, and you just have to get away. And I did it my first time, going through it, and I saw what they were doing, and I was like, okay, turn this way, turn that way, and I didn't get stuck on anything. I didn't get hit on any kind of walls or anything. I knew what they were trying to show me. I had missed a jump earlier, one of them, and I was like, oh, okay, and I can just jump back over. But it's interesting because you see how fast they're moving at you, and you have that sense of like, okay, I need to get out of here. Like, I can't do anything, and it's crazy too because there's so many of them, and you're just trying to get away. But at that moment, there's that part where she's trying to get away, and she gets pinned in between a fence
Oh, I
while
love this moment. Abby, right? Yeah.
yes, when she's trying to get away and she's getting pinned up against the side of the building, and the fence is kind of right alongside it, so it kind of creates like a little alleyway. But these infected
Very
are pushed
small. Very small. It was like
very
just like
small, a
two
little small,
feet
little
barely.
narrow,
Yeah.
and what they're doing is they're pushing, because they're trying to get at you. They're pushing the fence, kind of like it's almost going to collapse on you, because they're trying to reach for you, and she's trying to just get away. And one of them actually grabs her hoodie and
Her
pulls it
hat.
off of
Yeah, she
yeah,
pulls the hat, and
pulls it
I'm
off
like,
her head.
oh my
Yeah,
god, they're like right
yeah,
there. That's fucking cool. Like,
yeah.
you saw how
And
close they are.
right at that scene, that's when she actually, one of them gets through the fence and is attacking her and just about to get her, and then Joel all of a sudden comes out of nowhere and shoots the guy in the head
Oh,
along with
it's so
Tommy.
good because all you see from the frame is this thing on top of her, and you're
Yeah,
smashing square to like.
yeah.
Try to get it off,
Yeah,
and all of a sudden you see a hand and a gun, and just
yeah.
boom, and then you hear that sound that you would hear out of after a loud explosion. Any like military movie or any kind of
Right.
action movie, you hear that like that
Yeah,
hearing, because of course it was right next to your ear. That was
right.
so fucking cool.
Yeah, it didn't. I was really surprised that they're in there, because you've never seen that perspective before. You've never played another character that's not them, not the main characters, and now you're playing somebody else, this total stranger, and you guys are just kind of pinned, even though you don't know each other. You're pinned, and everyone's just fighting to survive, and that's kind of how it would be. You're gonna take away your differences because you guys don't know each other, but your common threat is the infected. But as soon as the infected are gone, you go right back to the way things were. Like you can take away the small little things because these infected don't care. They'll kill both of you. They don't care.
Mm-mm.
Like they'll want to eat you. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. They have no personal interest in it. That's what they do. And that whole scene, like it took me about maybe 7 or 8 times to get through this scene because these things are coming at you, and when they're swinging at you, you have to dodge out of the way, and you have to be able to just move out of the way so fast. And the indicator for me, it doesn't tell you when another infected is around you, while you're trying to get away. And there's so many times when they're trying to figure out a way, and I would just get eaten. I would get taken down by one.
Yeah, it doesn't even on normal mode either. Like
Okay.
it kind of just basically like, oh, you could see kind of where you're in front of you, and it just, if you're looking the wrong way, someone's gonna come up behind you. They just take you.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm with you in this moment where Joel and Tommy are trying to like move this like big I don't know, structure. Like, no, it's not even a box. They try to put it on like a pushy, like it has wheels on it, and they try to push this big thing to kind of climb up on something higher. So you're basically trying to give time to Tommy to kind of like move this thing on its own and protect him a little bit. But I've died so many times in this
Yeah.
area. Like,
Yeah.
it is brutal. Like, they give you find a weapon, like a pipe, and right before the section with Joel and Tommy, and you grab it out of the wall. You can actually, but if you don't pay attention, you could kind of miss it. So you have like a sort of a melee weapon, and then there's like two, I think, hidden. Not hidden. It's like on certain places in this room that you're in, and then it's just chaos. Like, all these things are coming after you.
Yeah.
Some are dropping down from the top, like a little section,
Hmm.
and then others are just coming through a different way. Then you get a clicker. Then you're like, "Fuck, man! They're just fucking everywhere." And Joel, of
Right.
course, is doing his best to like fend off all of these things with you and things like
Right.
that. But it's just very intense, and I died a lot in this
Yeah.
this area.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
another thing I
I died a
noticed
few times.
another thing I noticed, like before this section, is there's a vending machine, or a snack machine, or whatever, and you
Yeah.
can break it to
Yes.
get health. And at first, I was using like a brick or like a bottle to break it, but I didn't realize till
Hmm.
later on you actually can just use your melee
Yeah.
attack
Yeah.
and break
Yeah.
it open instead of using like a bottle or a brick. I didn't notice that until like later in the game, but that's
Yeah.
another cool thing.
I thought about it and I'm like, huh, I wonder if I can do this because I had a hammer. And I was like, huh, I don't want to throw a bottle because there's a scene when you learn about that. And I was like, I wonder if I could just hit it with my hammer. And sure enough, yeah, there's a little thing. It just
Hmm.
hits the actual window and it breaks just like it should be,
Hmm.
or just like it should. But that whole scene, just the way that how hard it is because they're just coming at you so quickly and so ferociously, while Tommy's trying to push this. It's kind of like one of those things that those ski lodge things that you would connect onto when you want to go higher up in the mountain, and you would have these little cages that you basically are on these like cable cars kind of thing, and he's trying to attach him. He's trying to push it up against this top of the building so you can get through a window. But it's so hard to get through. Like it took me, I'd say like maybe 8 or maybe even 9 times because it's just these things just keep coming at you, and it
Yeah.
just shows you like how difficult this thing is going to be, like how difficult this game is going to be.
Yeah, especially if you get
When you're
found. Yeah, that's the thing. When
right.
they're coming at you, like I think I died like 5 or 6, and you're obviously you were on a harder difficulty, but
Yeah.
it was tough trying to get out of that room. But it's
Yeah,
but
yeah. There's a scene where there's like maybe 6 of them that are swinging at me, and I dodged. But I was going back. I was walking backwards,
I
like
love it.
I was running backwards, but still looking at them, and I was, dodging back and forth so they wouldn't hit me. And then eventually I ended up dying. But I was just like, oh my god, there's like 6 of them that are swinging at me, and I was just like, dude, I can't get through this. I would
Hmm.
run, I'd shoot one of them, and then get out of the way, and then I just try to just get myself away from them. But they just keep coming at you, and it's just like you got to keep running away and getting a little bit of space from them, and just shoot them once, and then just move out of the way
Yeah.
because you can't take them all on at once because they're gonna overrun you, and then they're just gonna eat you.
Hmm. And
But
I will mention too, like in all, obviously, I've played video games for all of my life, like going
mhm.
from Atari all the way up. this game like surprises me with the most of the amount of like mechanics they introduce in this game, the graphic
Yeah.
fidelity. I'm astonished we're getting games that look like this, and we've our medium what is from like I would if you want to really go back maybe like the 70s. So we
Yeah.
haven't had that much time compared to other mediums like movies or books or what have you. And it's like we went from like fucking, Pong to video games with narrative that can fucking make you feel and bring
Right.
stuff out of you. It's fucking amazing how far
Right.
we've come, man. I can't fucking believe it. I love it.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like the scene that you had when in the Last of Us when they're coming at you and you open up the little gate and I think it's the scene when you're in Boston and you open up the gate while they're coming at you like there's a horde coming towards you and you have just enough time to open up the gate just a little bit and then you go under it and then you close it down and then they send no I think it's the yeah there's two scenes but there's one in particular you open up the gate and you go under and then they close the gate and then you can still hear the infected pushing up against the actual
Mm-hmm.
gate itself trying to get
Pounding on it,
through
yeah.
you. Yeah, and then they do the same thing in this one where right when they kind of find a way to be able to lock them off, the infected because they kind of get away, they're all looking at the door with their guns drawn, and you can see the look of Abby's face is just like, oh my god, like if like pure fear
She's
and like
stunned. She's like,
she's
oh
just like
shit.
she's like she can't like she's not even focused on what's like she's not even really even there like I'm like I don't even know what's happening like like you can't believe like this is like there's so many of them maybe she's never seen that before she's never seen so many of
That
them.
many, yeah, because you get to the point where you get into back to the mansion that I think Tommy and Joel were staying at, and they lock the doors behind them, and they're clearly banging. And this is the scene where she's like, "Oh fuck, like what is going on?" But they're banging on the
Right.
door and things, and they're like,
Right.
"What do we do?" He's like,
Right.
Tommy's like, "We gotta stay in here," and Joel's like, "Are you fucking crazy? Like we
Yeah.
can't stay here, dude. Like
Yeah.
we gotta fucking get the fuck out of here. Like they're
Yeah.
clearly pounding on the door. We need to get out."
Right.
And
Right.
Abby's like, "Oh, well, my friends are just like over this place over here, not too far away." Because at their point, at
Mm-hmm.
this point, Joel's like, "We need to go back home," and he's like, "The horses,
Right.
in the snowstorm. We're not going to be able to make it. They're not going to be able to make it." So she's like,
Right.
"Well, my friends are just over here," and he's like, "Oh, that's so and so's house. Like that's this place or whatever. I forget what the name of the guy who used to live there or whatever." They're like,
Right.
"All right, well, this is a plan." They get on their horses and they like get out, and as soon as they're like Tommy's like the last one to kind of get out because Abby's on Joel's horse, and you can see that the infected like literally like 10 or 20
Yeah, they're
feet
right there.
right behind them as they're
Yeah.
running in after them. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, they barely get away,
Yeah,
just barely get
barely
away.
barely.
And even just them trying to just get away they easily could have not got through and they all could have just died just that quickly. But this kind of leads into, and this is what we're kind of getting to
Mm-hmm.
at this point. Abby tells them, hey, I'm staying here with some other people in this mansion, and they're like, okay, let's go there. And then that's when they barely get away.
Mm-hmm.
Now the scene that leads up to that, after it goes back to Ellie and Dina, uh, after that it shows them in the compound or that in that mansion house, and that scene when they're walking into that room and they're all like there and then they all casually walk in and be like, hey, when did you guys, Joel's like, hey, when did you guys get here? And they're like, oh, we got here yesterday. And he's like, huh,
Yeah.
yesterday.
Can I like backtrack a little bit?
Oh
So
yes.
when
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
get to the mansion area, they close it off with the gates, and then there's
Hmm.
a few of them that are shooting at the infected because there's a few of their gang there, and then
Right.
I think it was Owen that throws the Molotov cocktail, like
Yeah.
save your ammo, and throws it in there.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
walk
Yeah.
into the bottom of the garage with the horses, and they're casually talking like, hey, do you the one girl, I think it, damn, I can't remember her name because she's. Never mind. So she comes up and says something like, hey, do you want us to help you take off the saddles, off the horses? And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, nah, we're not gonna, get out of you. We're gonna get out of your hair like pretty soon. We're not
Yeah.
gonna stay too
Yeah.
long. But if you have any
Yeah.
like, blankets or anything to get the snow off these horses, like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. And that's when Owen
Yeah.
pulls Abby into the next room. And is like,
Right.
what are you? Where were you? What happened? Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's like, kind of like, this and that. That's what you're talking about here at this point, where they mention
Yeah.
like how long you guys been here. Oh, we
Yeah.
got here yesterday. They're like, oh, okay, cool. And then the one guy asked Tommy, he's like, hey, where do you guys live? Like, are you too far? Like, are you pretty close? He's like, oh, we have a town down not too far away.
Yeah.
If you guys are leaving soon, come by. We'll hook you up with some supplies and things like that.
Right.
And they're like, oh yeah, thanks, whatever.
Yeah.
And then he's like, yeah, my name's Tommy. Mel comes up and says, I think she actually first introduces herself. She's like, hey, I'm Mel. And he goes,
Yeah.
oh, my name's Tommy, and that's my brother. And
Right.
then at this point, Joel goes, yeah, he introduces himself and says, yeah, my name is Joel. And the room is silent.
Yeah.
And you're like, he actually says, after they kind of look at him like, what? He's like, you guys look like you have heard of me before.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear Abby go, they have. And you show her with a shotgun and then shoots Joel in the leg.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, fuck, dude. Even after playing the second time, I was like,
Yes.
what the fuck is going on? Like, I
Yes.
have this goosebump feeling of like just disgustingness. I'm like, oh my fucking God. What just fucking happened?
Yeah. Before even just leading into that, the girl that introduces herself, that's Mel.
Yes, Mel.
So she's the only one that introduces herself. But when they walk into that room,
Mm-hmm.
when Owen pulls Abby aside and be like, "Where were you? What happened?" When they walk in, if you notice, Joel kind of looks around real quick, and
He does.
he's quick to pick that up. But he notices that they close the door, and he looks over, and they close the door, and they're basically just surrounding them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's not until they realize that they're in trouble, like the camera work even makes it a point, the sound makes a point to like, hey, it looks like they're in trouble. And he's like, oh, this is my brother. And he's like, Joel. And then they stop and they look at him, and then everyone kind of pulls back, and they're like, two of them are sitting down on the couch.
Yes,
And they
that's
like
the
kind of
ones.
like
Yep.
they sit upright, and then Joel's like, y'all acting like you've heard of us or something. And then that's where Abby, they pan to Abby, and she's got the shotgun, and she doesn't even say anything. That right after right when she shoots, she's like, "That's because they have,"
Mm-hmm.
and she shoots him right in the leg, and then
Mm-hmm.
they attack Tommy. They hit him
Mm-hmm.
over the head,
Yep.
and then they knock him out. Well, they hit him several times with a gun
Yep.
over the
The
head,
butt of the gun, the
and it's like,
handgun.
wait,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, no, like this whole time that this was happening, this is the stuff that we talked about. Like I was just like, man, I hope that's not that scene
Mm-hmm.
that thing we talked about when we were
Mm-hmm.
breaking down that trailer. And I was like, dude, I hope it's not this.
Mm-hmm.
And in this scene, I mean, anyone that's listening at this point, if you have not played this game, do not even listen to what we're talking
You're
about.
crazy if you haven't. If you're
You're
listening to
crazy
this,
if you've heard this.
yeah, you're listening to this,
If-
you're crazy. Oh, you
Well,
should play this game.
if you do, I appreciate that. And if you don't like spoilers or
All
anything
right.
like that, that's
Fine.
I commend you for that.
Fine.
Commend you for that. But what they do is Abby just points that gun at him, and she's just like, they're just telling him like, "Who are you?" And then she just says, "Guess." And he's looking around, and the way he like pulls his head up and like raises his chin to him, and like he's like a pure, utter disgust, and he's just like, "Why don't you just go ahead and do whatever, tell me whatever speech you rehearsed,
Yep.
and get this over with."
Yep.
Like he knew who they were,
Well,
because the way he looked at them, he looked, and like his face went up, and his chin, like he raised his chin to them, and he's just like looking at them like, just get it over with.
so
Like I think he knew who they were.
So this like kind of at this point, and of course Abby tells Mel to come over and like tourniquet his leg because she wants him alive
Yeah.
and she mentions like, you're not gonna get off that easy, like this is gonna be
Right.
torture, like
Right.
you stupid old man kind of thing. I
Yeah.
think she mentions and says, but I feel like at this moment, like Joel doesn't really know exactly who they are. I feel like because they paint this character as a smuggler. He's wronged people in the past, and he feels like, man, this has got to be somebody that's coming after me. Like, I'm surprised that it's taken this long for someone to kind of try to have vengeance, because he's killed a lot of people. He killed, if you played the first game, he killed Robert. He killed all these different people that are there, and so he's like, I feel like at this point he's like, I knew this was going to happen eventually. Someone was going to find me from all the horrible shit that quote unquote horrible shit he did, because he had to survive, or he had to do his things with Tess or what have you. But this was a point where he's like, I love that line. Rehearse. He was like, just fucking bring up the speech you've already rehearsed and fucking just get it over with already. I don't want to fucking care. I was like, damn, dog. Damn.
Yeah.
So.
And how fitting is it that Ellie finds the house?
Yep.
Gets inside, and she sees what's happening, and she's witnessing. She ends up, Abby is just beating Joel to death with a golf club.
Yeah. And so when she's like walking up, or she gets off her horse, leads up into the mansion, you can hear like Joel screams, and she's like, oh my God, oh my God. So
she knows that. She knows that sound.
I also do appreciate that. I mean, you get into the first room, and there's a couple of bullets and ammo there. So there's those two things to pick up. But in the rest of the place that I looked around on my second playthrough, there's nothing to pick up. And I like the fact that they did that, because it's like, don't worry about looking for shit here. Like, just go down and follow the story, because this is what's important. It's not like looking around trying to find shit. You're like, I need to go down here. I hear screams. Like, I need to go follow this. And she cracks the door and sees Abby with the golf club and Joel, and she points the gun. And of course, the one guy comes in and grabs her and puts her on the tries to throw her onto the ground. She goes and slashes his face with her knife and tries to stab him. And of course, somebody else comes down and grabs her, puts her down, and then has her head down and is forced to watch what Abby is doing.
Yeah. And even I got flashbacks from The Walking Dead. At this point, when I was reading the graphic novel, they introduced the governor, which is a major villain in the Walking Dead series. And
can I say this?
Yes,
read the comics. Do not watch the show. That's all I have to say.
They switched the characters around. The Walking Dead TV show is good because it gives more of these characters time to really talk, and you get to see more of their actual how they think and like all their situations. It's good that way because it's real heavy on dialogue.
I like the first maybe like 2 seasons, but it gets so like this is samey. Like, I love the comic series. The comic series is fucking great. But yeah, the governor is awesome.
Yeah, so I got flashbacks to what happens to one of the characters when
spoilers
the governor gets a hold. I'm not gonna say it, but I got flashbacks to that because that's one of the reasons why I kind of stopped watching the TV show, because they kind of, in the beginning, or towards that scene when they actually introduce the character, they allude to that character, something happening, and it's a little different. And I got flashbacks. So I was like, oh no, I don't want that to happen, because when I read that for the first time when that was happening, I was so fucking pissed off. I was so mad. I couldn't believe what was happening. And in this scene, when this is happening, it's exactly what I was thinking. Exactly what Ellie says when they pin her down and they're kicking her. After she's just watching what's happening. She just tells him, she's like, I'm gonna kill all you motherfuckers.
Oh my God, it's so good. Like the acting.
Yeah,
she's
so. Like
you're gonna fucking die. Joel, get up. Joel, fucking get up.
Yeah, she's like, tells him stop. She's like, Joe, get up. Get up.
Please stop.
She's like, he goes, yeah, that's what she says. She says, you're gonna die. You're all gonna die.
I'm gonna fucking kill you all.
Fucking kill you.
Like, oh my God, like her. You could tell.
You're gonna fucking die.
You believe it clearly. Yeah, it's fucking nuts. But just seeing that, and then Owen comes in during this point, and he's like, who the fuck is this girl? And they're like, oh, she fucking came in. And he's like, you guys were supposed to be watching this. Like, you were supposed to be on patrol. Like, they're like, oh, we didn't think anybody was gonna come down here. Like, duh. Like, of course you don't think so, but you still anticipate something happening. So you guys fucked up, and now there's a girl down here, and then tells Abby, like, you're fucking done. Like,
Yeah.
Finish this. Like
Yeah.
we're not prolonging this anymore. So
Yeah.
then at this point, this is when, clearly Ellie's still on the ground, and Abby ends up staring back at Ellie and then back at Joel, and then fucking ends it with one last hit to the skull and
Yeah.
kills him.
And it's so brutal that there's a piece of his brain that's on the golf club that they show right when Ellie sees it, when you see the blood kind of squirting out from his head. You see her just sobbing. She's just horrified for what she just saw.
It's horrible.
Like, how do you comprehend what you just saw? Like, you're basically your father, the one that saved you from everything, and now you get to witness him actually dying,
and you can't
and
save him.
you can't.
How
do
many
nothing.
times he saved you and you can't save him? That's
Right,
heartbreaking,
right.
dude. Heartbreaking.
And even that one guy at the end, right after he dies or when he's dying, he fucking spits on him. He spits on Joel.
Oh, it's I guess I won't say the name because it doesn't.
Yeah, don't say who it is.
Because
But
it's not yet.
But she sees that and she says, "I'll fucking kill you."
Mm-hmm.
And he was about to shoot her.
Yep.
But she's just,
Owen
she's
stopped
just
him.
like, yeah, she's like,
Mhm.
what else are you gonna do? Like, you've taken everything away from me. She's like, that's all. That's that rage that we're talking about in the trailer when we're breaking this down. This is what we're talking about. That it's not going to be what we thought it could have been, the girlfriend.
And
but
that's what I was gonna say is that I thought it was gonna be
yeah,
Dina. I thought this was gonna be like a revenge story on like,
yeah,
oh, they killed my girl, like I'm coming after
yeah,
these motherfuckers, but it's
yeah,
clearly not.
yeah.
They did that. That's fucking crazy. But yeah,
I love that they switched that. I mean, they
yeah.
switched it around, but that's complete motivation on what we talked about. And I wonder if the stuff that we were talking about is true, where you're getting flashbacks to with her and Joel, because at this point Joel's dead, and it's the aftermath of this which catapults you into the story, which is
Mm-hmm.
you find out that Abby, Owen, these other people, Mel, are part of this group called WLF, and you don't know what they are. There's some sort of like militia group or something, like kind of like the Fireflies, but another version of them. But the WLF stands for Washington Liberation Front. So it's
AKA
based
the
it's based
Wolves.
in the Wolves. It's based in Washington, and where they go to
Our
is
hometown now.
they go to Seattle, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like fucking crazy, man. I couldn't believe that. I mean, they at this point at the end they take off. Tommy is still alive, so they
Dina
didn't.
finds Ellie. Yeah.
Right. So they Dina finds him and they end up saving him, but by then the group had already left.
Yes.
But they make a point not to kill them.
Yeah.
Like their target was Joel.
Mm-hmm.
And the part that I had real trouble with, obviously this whole scene, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but the part that it really got me was just like, wait a minute, Joel just saved her from utter death not too long ago, and she didn't remember that. It wasn't enough for her to kind of maybe think of like, hey, maybe I could be dead right now if this person wouldn't have helped me.
See, that's
But it's like it didn't matter, and that's what I didn't like about it at first, because I was just like, this person could have just easily died, and this person is the one that saved you, the one that you end up killing. You made the decision to do that. He didn't know you. It didn't seem like he recognized you at all. If he did, he wouldn't have saved you.
See, this is
So
where everyone has this conniption or has this issue with not only this scene is like, why would Joel save her? Even in the first game where they were driving with Ellie and Ellie's like, stop, there's a person there that probably needs help.
Right.
And he's like,
Right.
he's not like a regular person. He's
Right.
just trying to kill
Right.
us. So like people were like, why would he help Abby? That's bullshit. Like that's a different character. Like you guys, and he like people are getting pissed off about it. And I'm like, to me, he's helping someone that clearly needs help, right? It's not
Right.
like a different situation where she's clearly just standing there and they come across and they start talking about it. Of course, he's going to be weary of
Right.
he's in this world, but I feel like based off of where they are, like he clearly has his guard up at all times. But they live in this town now, like over years in time of like dealing with their own people and living in this place, like he's letting his guard down slowly and slowly. Like,
Right.
of course he's going to be wary of new people, but at the same time, she was clearly in trouble. She's a girl. He probably reminds her of Ellie too. You know what I mean? Like, he's not just going to be like, oh, I'm just going to let this girl die.
Right.
This infected dude's about to kill her. Oh, I'm just going to let it go. No, he's not going to do that. He clearly is going to save her. It's again a remembering of her, his daughter, and then Ellie as well. So like they're trying to paint this picture of like, oh, he wouldn't do that. I'm like, bullshit. As you get through the game more and more, and you could see like the different character perspectives and why, let's say, they didn't kill Ellie in that situation. You kind of understand it more and more as the game goes on, but with this specific situation, Owen stopped it. He's like, you finish it. This is the guy you're clearly after. We're only after this person. We're not trying to kill all these people. Like, we're not,
because they know what's going to happen if they do that.
that
Well, obviously it didn't matter because they're going to have the entire town on them.
that
So
was
it's
the
like,
other thing, because Owen said that
Yeah.
when they were looking at the town, we're like, all these people could come right after us, and we were like,
Right.
what? There's like 7 of them there. Like, so
Right.
clearly that you wanted to take out the person you did. You're gonna do it. So let's move on and get the fuck out of here. Like, people are gonna come after us. You have Ellie on the ground, and they could have killed her just to do it. But I feel like there's a like a morality. They're like clearly coming after Joel for a reason, but at the same time they don't want to sit there and just mass murder a whole bunch of people. Like, you can tell that there's some kind of moral compass, even though clearly they didn't give a fuck about Joel. So that's my 2 cents with this situation where people were pissed off.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. It's another person that is in need of help, and they were already there, and in that situation, I think he was helping, and just like they met up with Henry and Sam.
Someone was in trouble.
They initially didn't need help. They stumbled upon each other, but they ended up helping each other. And there's that scene where Joel gets where you and Sam are together, and he could have easily let the kid die, but he didn't. You make a point to survive through that little area when you guys get separated, and he's still there. You still take care of the other person because they're trying to survive just like you, and he doesn't know that. He thinks that they're just a wanderer that just so happened has been overrun by all these infected, and he's just helping that one person out. So it's like they know they don't have that kind of guard anymore, and that's just the thing, is that you can't trust anybody, and unfortunately because of that they let their guard down because they have that sense of safety because they have that community. But it's once you leave that community, man, you're not safe at all. But
Yeah, but I mean, think about it this way too. Like, even if, let's say, the situation, let's say Abby wasn't even in the picture, right?
yeah,
Let's say he didn't even help her out. Joel and Tommy were still there. They were still like looking at this fence. It's not like they came out of nowhere and they're like, "Oh, I think someone's in trouble like a mile away.
Right,
Let me go and help her." No,
Right.
they were clearly there already anyway. And these infected are breaking down this fence. They're clearly going to have to run regardless. They were still stuck in a position where they couldn't stay there either. They had to get out. They were in a snowstorm. The horses couldn't make it all the way back to town. So it's like, even if they were on their own and Abby wasn't even there, they're pretty much kind of fucked no matter what. They had to figure out a way out. So adding Abby into this and then them taking back to the mansion that they were at, like, it's what do you expect? Like, this is the way that there's the story that's going to be. So all the haters out there kind of fuck off. That's my opinion.
I just think that's a thing to not complain about because everyone's angry about what happened. I mean, I get it. Nobody wanted this to happen with the main character, but this is what's happening. This is what's thrusting this character into doing what they're doing because Joel's process of what he was doing in the first game was kind of driven by himself. It was very self-driven. He found like a situation where he can be able to benefit by running guns and supplies, and he gets thrown in on this kind of thing of this girl and like, hey, I need you to take this package to somewhere else, and that's it. Get a job and you get the guns, and this is what you get. And little did he know that this whole thing would change his entire life. And this situation now with Ellie, as a result of all of this happening, this is going to catapult her into her story of what she's going to be like in the next 20 years. When if it flashes to 20 years, she's because they're mirroring each other. Like Joel and Ellie are so close to each
Mm-hmm.
other, and they're going to be doing the same type of things because that's just a world that they live in. And now that's like the whole that's what the story goes, is that Ellie is gonna go to Seattle to be able to find these people and like basically take them all down like a one man army. And Dina ends up going along with her
Mm-hmm.
because she's just like, hey, I don't want you to go by yourself. And Tommy, the next day or maybe a
Yes.
couple days later,
Yep.
he gives her something. He's giving her like a little box or something,
This
and he's
food
just
that
like, hey,
Maria made.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's right. And he's just like, just give me a day. He goes, well, if we can be able to find, if we leave the town, we might leave it vulnerable and things like that,
Mm.
which are valid points. And she's just like, if this happened to you, Joe would already be halfway to Seattle by now.
Yeah.
And she just doesn't understand why there's a resistance. But you find out that this resistance actually changed because Tommy, instead of saying, hey, don't go, give me a day, he did that so then he can actually go out himself to
Which
Seattle,
is
which you didn't
crazy.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, which you didn't know up until you actually find out the day that your character is gonna be set already, set in her way. She's not gonna stay there.
No.
She's going after these people, and you find out that Maria ends up telling them that Tommy had left,
Yeah.
and Maria's like, hey, bring my husband back to me,
Mm-hmm.
bring him back safe, please.
And I'm
And then there
honestly,
you,
I'm honestly glad that they got the Joel death out of the way, because I think, like everybody else, assumed that if it was gonna happen, it was gonna happen at the end, as like you're gonna fight with Joel
Right.
up like throughout
Right.
this entire game, and then something happens, and then, like you mentioned, that I was listening to the podcast, the recent one with Peter,
Mhm.
you guys like mentioned that what you expected out of this new game, and you were like, oh,
Yeah.
I think you said something along the lines of, well, Ellie's gonna hold Joel like he held Sarah in his arms
Yes.
as he's
Yes.
dying and what have you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
And you guys were talking about, or you specifically mentioned like Joel's death, and I'm like, holy fuck! Like, I know what I know playing this game, and I'm like, oh fuck,
Yeah.
you pulled it off without even having to. I mean, it's sort of obvious because he's a beloved character, but you kind of
Right.
mentioned that without actually having it spoiled for you. But yeah, like you
Right.
said, like we start out after all of this. Tommy's trying to convince her to stay, and Ellie's like,
Mhm.
dude, Joel would have left yesterday to try to,
Yeah.
to take these people out if it was you.
Right.
And
Right.
he goes and says, give me a day.
Mhm.
And he leaves, without Ellie, to like kind of take it on his own.
Right.
You and Dina, or Ellie's at Joel's grave, paying her respects. You walk up
Yeah.
into Joel's house. At
Yeah.
this point, I think you mentioned something, because it says his name. Does it say his last name? Is this the first time we hear that
Yes.
it's Miller or
So
something?
you find out that his last name is Miller, and you actually see that on his grave that they made for him.
Yeah, I can't remember if it
But
was in the first game or not, but I mean, I'm very
I-
forgetful,
it,
so I
it
don't
could
know.
it could have been.
I feel like it might have been,
in the
but-
house. It could have been at the house when you first encounter the infected and you're leaving for the first time,
Mhm.
and like Tommy comes and gets you in the car, and then you guys take off. It might have been at the mailbox, but
Yeah.
the point of when you're walking up from the graveyard to the house, to Joel's house, is that you see all these flowers that are like laid there on the ground up on the steps, and you see the little, like, I saw the mailbox and it said Joel Miller, and I stopped and I
Mhm.
looked at that for a second because I'm just, like, at this point you're at your low. You're just like, you lost something that was this character is so important, and you lost him. You saw what happened, and you're just in this loss now. Like, you don't know what to do now. And these little reminders, these little things that are in the house, when you go inside, you see the picture of Sarah and Joel, celebrating her trophy for playing soccer.
Mhm.
That same picture that Tommy said, hey, I have this for you, and Joel ends up throwing it back on the ground, and he's just like, I don't want it anymore. Like, that reminder.
And then
that
Ellie
they
picks
kept.
it up and
Yeah,
keeps
she
it and
picks it
shows
up
it
and
up in the
keeps it.
first game. Yeah. And then you could tell
Yeah.
in Joel's room, he's like woodworking, like he's like creating these different
Yeah.
figures, and you could see his guitar and things like that. And then you
Yeah.
come across the box that has his watch, the broken watch
Yes.
that he always wore because it
Yes.
reminded him of Sarah. And she grabs that and grabs his gun, which is
Yes.
like a 6-shooter, but it's more
Yeah.
powerful. So he grabs that.
Right.
Then Dina says something like, "Come downstairs," and she's like, "Is everything okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, everything's fine. Just come down." And that's where you see Maria, and they have that conversation about Tommy actually leaving,
Right.
and go get my husband.
Right.
So that's where we kind of leave.
So that's where it goes. It's you and Dina heading from what are they in
Jackson, yeah.
Jacksonville? Is it in Florida?
No,
I
no,
mean,
it's
or Jackson,
Wyoming, I'm gonna say.
Wyoming. Okay, so they trek all that way to the West Coast, all the way to Seattle in our neck of the woods, and we're gonna at this point we're gonna stop it from here because there's so much more that we want to talk about, but it's just our overall like impressions for what the story now is. Now that you're aware of what's happening, what the stakes are, um, with what's happening, do you okay? I well, I'll have you actually answer it. How do you feel about the way that the narrative is being structured now? That it's Ellie based on her just finding revenge. Do you find that to be fitting, or do you find that there should have been more to you leading up to going to Seattle and finding these people? Like where were you at this point?
I mean, I felt like clearly there was a really good motivation, obviously,
Yeah.
for her to kind of seek out revenge, and I think that's a good starter. Like at the time, I'm like, yeah, let's fucking go. Let's fucking go find
Yeah.
these people and
Right.
seek revenge. Yeah, of course. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, damn, can you do it? Can you go through all of these states and then end up trying to find this girl in this
Right.
entire
Right.
world? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make sense. Like, are you just gonna try to find this person? She could just die like tomorrow by accident from
Right.
an infected, and then you're not going to
Right.
even find her anymore. So it's like I thought that too, but like it's clear motivation. It makes sense, and as I'm telling you, as the game plays, and we'll clearly this is only the first part that we're going to have a podcast about. We're clearly going to go throughout the entire game talking
Yes.
about this, so it's going to be long, but
Yes.
for this first part, it makes sense to me, and it makes even more sense once you get further in the story. But at the time, I
Okay.
was like, all right, cool. This is just a simple thing. Clearly, okay, you killed like one of your father figures, and let's go. That's all I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I was exactly the same way. Like I was just like, let's go. This is exactly what I knew the story was gonna be, because even the trailer alluded to that, where it was just there's scenes where she's bathed in red with like red line or like red lighting all over her.
Mm-hmm.
So you knew that her journey was gonna be a bloody one, and even the cover of her is her just like with all this blood, with this intensity, this kind of like this anger that she has with this on the cover of the actual game. So you knew that it was going to be mainly her, but man, I mean, I had no idea that they were going to do it this way, and I wanted to know why, or like what happened that led them up to this point. Like why, like why Abby's like why she was so driven by finding this person out. Like she had trekked all this way to try to find him, and how would you even find this person? Like
Mm-hmm.
in the midst of everything that's going on, how would you find anybody? But
Now think about it this way:
obviously,
even with Ellie, like how would you even find this person? How
right,
would you even do this?
right,
But if there's a will, there's a way. That's what I'm going to say with
right,
that.
right. Yeah, so I just think that at this point I love what they're doing. I love the narration of the fact that it's a revenge story, but it's a clear path of understanding the people that you encounter are people that you despise. No matter who they are, they're a part of this, and it's no matter what, they're not gonna stand in your way to get to what you want. And now that you know that Mel is pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
and you've seen her face, and Owen,
Mm-hmm.
and Abby especially. I wonder who these other characters that I've seen in the trailers, that like there's one guy that's wielding this big hammer. I'm curious on who he is. I'm curious on once you start seeing more of the community, because I'd imagine that you find them or they're hunting you down within the city that you're in Seattle. Um, but I'd imagine that you're gonna see some changes within the map that you're in, the big, because I don't know if it's set all in Seattle, but if it is, that's fucking awesome, man. Because looking at that thing and pulling up the
Mm-hmm.
map that you see, you can actually see the streets of
Mm-hmm.
downtown. I was like, hey, I know exactly where that is, or
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that library building. I know exactly where that
Yeah, and
is.
it's new to me because clearly I've only been here for what 7 months, like since October or so. So I haven't been
Okay,
here in the state for too long, but it's cool seeing all these different things. And there's a YouTube
right.
video. I don't know if I sent it to you or not, but there's somebody. It's no spoilers, but it's just a video of somebody comparing what the real world version of the game where if that makes sense. So they're showing like
Yeah,
certain structures and certain environmental moments from the game and then kind of
right.
showing a split screen for what it actually looks like in real life to kind of give you a little bit more context. So I have that on my
Oh,
YouTube
that's
and
cool.
I'll probably send it to you. I don't think I sent it to you, but yeah,
Okay,
it's fairly straightforward. It's a revenge thing, but it's very obviously this is Naughty Dog, so it's very complex. But
right.
I guess we'll leave it at that. Then do part two of part two.
Yeah, yeah. Let's. I mean, at this point, the my overall impressions are just like I knew what they were going to be doing. I knew that it was going to be bigger and much more. There's going to be improvements. There's going to be the mechanics of the gameplay and like the combat and all that stuff is going to be improved. But I really didn't understand how much it was going to be improved to, because it's almost as if you're playing another game, because they made so many changes to it and they refined
Mm-hmm.
all of the little things that you couldn't, like, you saw little nitpicks and little things in there. They took care of all
And
that.
keep in mind
Like,
that they started developing this game after the remaster of Last of Us on PS4.
wow,
So that
okay,
was
so they've
literally
been doing
it's
this
like
for a long.
6 years or so. It's been seven
That's
since the
great.
game came out, but they've been working on this for 6 years. So
I mean, you can definitely tell,
mhm.
especially with the improvements of having your character being able to prone and
I love that.
being able to move around, and you can pull your gun out at any point. You can point it while you're laying on the ground. You can lay on your
You
back and actually
mean
pull the gun
kind
around.
of like where they added it in Metal Gear Solid 5 and then a little bit in Snake Eater? What?
Wasn't what
What?
didn't they do that the first time in Metal Gear Solid 4? Not to correct you on your own
Oh, correct.
Metal Gear Solid knowledge.
Correct. You are correct. But I like when it
Okay.
came across like the grass is what
Yes.
and the camouflage system that they added in 3.
Yes.
I love that. And that's what reminded
Yeah.
me of this. I think I told you that. I'm just like, I kind of want to do this. It reminded me of this game.
Right.
I'm like, oh, this is
Right.
gonna be great.
Yeah. 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 I'm really excited about going on further with this, but I think at this point we can kind of be able to just say, okay, we'll keep it at this point here, which
Mm-hmm.
is about 3 to 4 hours in,
Yeah.
and then we'll do like maybe like a what do you think, like another 10 hours from now, or do you want to say a midpoint, or do you want to just finish out the game and then we can talk about it overall? What do you think?
I think we'll talk about it. I feel like the
Okay.
way that my notes ended up working out, I think I mentioned to you, is like the first 2 hours, and then I did like 6 to 8 hours, and then I did
Right.
like 10 to 12, and then in my 18 to 20s, and I kind of broke it down in that sense to kind of get the because
Okay.
there's so much to this game, and there's so many
Yeah.
things to talk about. I feel like
Right.
this podcast is not going to be just like here's 3 parts, and then our fourth one is going to be an overall
Right.
thought thing.
Right.
I think this is one of those that because of how long it took me, and it's probably going to take you longer just the way that you play, it took me
Right.
33 and a half hours. Some
Okay.
people have taken over 45 or 50 to get through the game because they want to see everything.
Okay.
So I feel like, and I think it's just a topic that we're going to talk about for a little while. So I don't know. I'll discuss it after when we're off mic, but
Yeah.
we'll kind of try to figure out what's going to be the best move for us to talk. But there's
Okay.
just so much shit to talk about.
I know.
So much.
I know. There's
I have 9
even
pages.
I know. You get, yeah, and it's gonna keep getting bigger.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. True.
I mean, at this point, I think we'll just kind of finish it out from here.
Because
But
I feel like the more that we have, like, because we
Right.
can. This is about 2 hours now, but if we can, do one that's an hour, another hour, so we can kind of get
Yeah.
through it in a way where it's
A little bit of a catch-up.
right? Yeah, but I don't
Okay.
know. Depends on
Okay.
how people feel and what we think about. What
yeah,
we're gonna do.
anyone that's actually played this game, if you want to go ahead and just put your thoughts on like what things were, comment. You could be able to. We'll link that other little thing too, as far as like the comparison between the real world and what's happening
Mm-hmm.
in the map itself that's in Seattle. So we'll put all that stuff in there. But we'll try to not just do this, which we did talk about that we were going to talk about this a lot. So we'll try to like bring this out in segments within like our initial podcast, so it doesn't feel so overwhelming. So if people haven't played this game or they don't really care too much, we'll try to like siphon it out so we can be able to have other pieces to it. So it's not just this, because it easily could just be that for like maybe 6 or 7 episodes. But I'd rather us be able to like get our thoughts together and like have a real a real review breakdown of like the
I
ending of it.
definitely want
So
to
I
do that too. It's just I
yeah,
feel like this game has so much to it. It's
right,
hard to kind of break it down. I know people have done it over like an hour and a half and like talked about spoilers, but I think there's just so many different things that are in this game that like
yeah,
I don't know. But we'll talk about it.
yeah. Yeah, and also too, the gameplay is all gonna be on the YouTube channel as well. So while I'm playing the actual game, I'm gonna be I've been recording it and I've been putting it up. So as of right now, there's 4 episodes that are in now, and or actually 3 right now, and then 4 I'm working on. I'm gonna be probably uploading by tomorrow. So I'm gonna be having the videos on there. So if anyone wants to follow along and actually see how I actually played
Mm-hmm.
and based on the stuff that I'm talking about, it's all on there. So it's on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/level1tester, and it's all gonna be on there, and it's not gonna have any commentary because I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna let it just play. So,
Yeah. And I
um,
think I might do it a little bit differently since you're like kind of
right.
uploading the way that you play. I feel like I might
Hmm.
end up because the cool thing about this game, they add so many different options on how you play, but you can pick out a specific chapter and play through it. So you can kind of pick and
Oh, that's cool.
choose. So I might end up just like recording video of me playing a certain I don't want to say battle scene, but like an event or an encounter with like
Right.
enemies to kind of see
Right.
what are the cool things that pop up and the things that you could do and the interactions or
Right.
shotgunning or using
The
a gun
differences.
or an arrow or trying to hide or maybe not trying to, maybe just trying to kill everybody. So like trying to break it
Right.
down, maybe something a little bit different than what you do. So kind of give people different things to watch.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great idea. Like I think that's probably like a better idea because you get more of the actual game. But I didn't even know you could do that. But
Yeah,
that
I was.
just motivates me more to be able to just play that on a New Game Plus, and
Yep.
then you could be able to have those options.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
but yeah, like I said, we'll leave it at that, and we'll try to have our normal podcast segment that we do in the next coming weeks. But we'll start actually keeping
We'll
this
see. I mean, we can do this
in between.
separate maybe, and then we'll add maybe it's in addition to our regular one. I don't know. We'll
Yeah,
try to
yeah,
figure something out.
we're figuring it
Yeah.
out. All the only thing is that we just want to talk about it, so we just have to cut ourselves off.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but all right, man. Well, it's been great talking about this. I know that we've been
Yes,
waiting. It
sir.
came out on the 19th,
Mhm.
and we just pacing our time and just getting our thoughts together.
Mhm.
So, we'll do this again, and we'll see y'all next week. Thank you very much for listening.
Peace.
Bye.